Can everybody hear? Could you just give me a thumbs up if you could hear? Great, thank you. We'll start exactly at 9. You could hear the music also, correct? You can't hear the music? No? Oh, I'm glad you said that. You hear the music now? Okay, good. I don't know what happened to the picture there, but okay. Is it full screen? Do you see it as a full screen? Hmm. Yeah. No, not full screen. I don't know, it's showing full screen for me. Um, is that full screen? What do you? Hmm. Do you see the side notes? Now you see the side notes, but when I hit this, is that better? That's full screen, right? Do you see it as a full screen? I'll take it as a yes. Okay, everybody can hear me and you can hear the video. Just make sure you can hear the sound. Somebody give me a thumbs up. Okay. And you see it full screen. Okay. All right. All right. So it's 9 o'clock. Thank you all for coming. Um, as we'll begin the just a quick reminder of the programs for at Or Torah. I know there's going to be a lot of people watching this on the Zoom. After on the YouTube, it will be posted on YouTube. But for Or Torah, so Mincha Chatzos is at 1:03, Mincha 1:40. We have the women's Chafetz Chaim video starting at 2:30, and then women's Tehillim at 4. Shared by Rebbetzin Freda Stone at 4:30. Chafetz Chaim main video. It has a lot of great speakers. Again, Charlie Harari, Rabbi Frand, Rabbi Krohn, and a lot of emotional video. It's an emotional video. And that will start at 5:30. 7:45 is Mincha. The Esha Torah, second Mincha. Esha Torah movie is going to be between Mincha and Ma'ariv. 8:44 is Ma'ariv. 8:56 the fast ends. Okay, so let's begin. The the Gemara in Tanis tells us that Kol Hamit'abel al Yerushalayim Zocha v'roa b'simchasa, that whoever mourns for Yerushalayim will merit to see her joy. I take this very, very seriously. This Gemara, I think it's really important that we, as a people, learn how to do everything to be able to handle all the different emotions that we have through the year. Simcha, we have to learn how to be besimcha. Some people don't know how to be besimcha. They're very sad all the time. So you have to learn to be besimcha. And at times of simcha, we learn to be besimcha. And Tisha B'Av is how we learn to mourn. And I think sometimes Shiva and other types of loss, they're very hard. But we do train ourselves in a way by Tisha B'Av to be able to handle the hardest times in our life. And so right now we sit and we read the Kinos and we talk about some of the saddest moments. Now it's very interesting. Last night I couldn't sleep the whole night, and so I was up. So I was listening to Rabbi J.J. Schachter's shiur from last year. Very interesting. He gives a shiur, a whole long shiur. And so he started off saying that he noticed that that Kinos, if you look at Kinos, so you'll see that Kinos has very little to do with Yerushalayim, the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. Everybody thinks that it's all about the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. It is, but the Kinos don't reflect that. He says it's just a line here, a line there. Mostly, what the Kinos are all about is the loss of the relationship that we have with Hashem and the distance of the relationship. But Rav Soloveitchik says this, and I saw this a while ago, that Rav Soloveitchik explains that even in the heart of the Kinos, the Pasuk teaches us, memory can be a source of hope, not only of sorrow. We remember not only what was lost, but the greatness that once was and can be again. It's a very powerful thing, and that's part of what Tisha B'Av's about, is it's not just about the loss, but it's also about the hope to the future. So during these keynotes, before I read this poem that I reminded me of, I just want to say that these keynotes, I'm going to have some very difficult videos. Not hard to well, they're not gory or anything like that, but I don't have any of that. But I do have videos that the ideas of them are going to be bothersome to us because I tried very hard to deal with what's happening to us, the feelings that we feel today. And I think it's it's a time of angst. It's a time where where uh, uh, um, so he said, Rabbi J.J. Schechter said on the keynotes that Rabbi Lamb in 1951 gave a drasha saying, why do we celebrate Tisha B'Av today for something that happened 2,000 years ago, where we should be celebrating. We have the land of Eretz Yisrael. Look, now we have a new land of Eretz Yisrael, so we should celebrate. But I think today we understand very clearly why we mourn today, and it's very clear. And so we're going to deal with some of those emotions today in this keynote. So I'm going to try to really bring them out, but I'm also going to bring a lot of hope, and there's a lot of inspiration here as well. So I want to read this poem. I think that this, where Rav Soloveitchik remind me of this poem. It says, "Until we meet again, those special memories of you will always bring a smile. If only I could have you back for just a little while. Then we could sit and talk again, just like we used to do. You always meant so very much and always will do too. The fact that you're no longer here will always cause me pain, but you're forever in my heart until we meet again." So even though things are lost, we have hope that it's not permanent. We see the world moves and changes, and until we meet again, until we have again the Beis Hamikdash, again we have the kind of glory that we have, and until Mashiach comes, and Yirtzeh Hashem, we could see our loved ones again. Now, thanks to AI, this keynote has been upgraded a lot, thanks to AI and Photoshop. So I built these little keynote signs so you know which keynote we're on. And I made some different graphics for each keynote. I couldn't fit them all on each page. So we'll start off with keynote 6. So keynote 6 is Shavas. And every year I explain Shavas Tsuri Menu Shema'uni Ovrai. Now, our rule in this keynote is that we're going to go through this on my video, then we'll spend 2 minutes reading the kina. And just 2 minutes to read the kina, and then we're going to go on to the next one. You have all day to read the kinos. Many of them are short. We will skip some. The Rav used to skip a bunch. Also explained, and he skipped. But so we're going to do that as well. But we'll stop after each time to read the kina. So this one, Suru. So the world stopped. Everything froze. Last night I mentioned how the kina number 5. How I always was it changed for me after October 7th, because I see how the whole world really is affected by. We say the whole world is affected by the Beis Hamikdash, and I always thought okay, that's just a very Jewish-centric thing. Okay, the world revolves around me. But no, we could see today that the whole world was affected by October 7th. Even now, shipping lanes, Yemen's involved and Iran's involved. We're in war with Iran, and the whole Middle East is being fired upon. I mean, the whole world is being affected. Oil can't go through. It's the whole world's affected because of what happened to the Jews on October 7th. It's unbelievable. But we see that that's it. So the world stopped. It's when somebody hears tragedy, you could be running to a meeting, you could be so busy, but the world stops. And then I wanted to focus on the next one this year. It says, "Schi ma'os hashimuni be'edrei chaverai." So listen to it. So you start hearing the people who you once called your friends. Right? I once called their friends. Now, what are they? They're calling me. They're not. We realize that they're not really our friends. They're not really our friends. So this video, I came across this video. It's a hard video. But I think there's a lot. It's a hard video because of what he says. And I feel it's like a really important video because it's talking about exactly what we feel about right now in the world. And we'll go on after this to explain it. But I think that this is something that we should all be thinking about. And then at the end, I'll have some suggestions on how we could handle it. So watch this video.
So there is this map that I want to show you. This is actually from November 2011, when the United Nations held a big vote about Palestine, and we'll get to what that was in a second. These are the countries that backed Israel in voting no. and these countries abstained, which was basically the same thing. What you were looking at here is the pro-Israel world as of 2011. Mostly Western countries and small nations that depend on them. These are the governments that arm Israel's military, that support it diplomatically, that shield it from international pressure. And to understand how far that support went, it helps to look at what that 2011 UN vote of the map was actually for. This is a UN agency called UNESCO. That name stands for Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, and they do like events and educational grants. It's all very benign and boring. The Palestinian government asked to join it, and from the UN's perspective, yeah, no big deal. The UN resolution that established Israel back in 1947 also called for an independent Arab state in Palestine. So, according to the UN, Palestine is a state just as much as Israel. It should be allowed to join this nice cultural agency. But Israel opposed this because they did not want anything that legitimized the idea of Palestine as a state. And these 65 countries sided with Israel. That's how far they went for them. But that was 2011. Check out what one of those blue countries is up to today. This is Italy's Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni.
Italy has criticised Israeli attacks peacekeepers there.
In light of the current situation, the government has decided to suspend the automatic renewal of the defense agreement with Israel.
This is a huge pivot, and this kind of thing has been happening a lot. Israel's backers, that network of countries that have been supporting it for decades, they've been kind of turning on it, one by one, often in small ways, but it is adding up. Today, we're going to look at what all of that is adding up to. We're going to ask what this means for Israel and what happens when the international support it's long counted on to do everything that it does starts to look like it could really go away. So I'm going to give away the ending slightly here and tell you that Israel has actually been quietly preparing for years now a plan for what to do if and when it loses the international support it relies on. We'll also look at why this is happening now and what it means that it is. But we'll begin by simply going through country by country on the map what is changing here. Starting early 2024, the height of Israel's war in Gaza. Experts were calling it a genocide. The International Criminal Court was preparing charges for war crimes. And that April, the UN did what it does. It held a symbolic, non-binding vote. This one, on admission of new members, that said, in theory, Palestine was qualified for membership. In other words, to be recognized as a state. The US had vetoed that, though, so all this actually changed was where the powerless Palestinian representative was seated in the UN assembly room. Still, this was a chance for countries to take a side. And a lot of them that had long sided with Israel used this vote to signal that that was kind of over. Look at that map again. We're going to label all of the countries that went from voting with Israel back in 2011 to voting against it in 2024. Australia and New Zealand, important Western countries. Japan and South Korea, major economies, usually vote with the West. A bunch of countries in Africa and the Caribbean that rely on Western support. A few other big ones. But also, and this was a big deal, a bunch of Europe. Denmark, Poland, Portugal, Estonia, plus a couple more. So look, Denmark and Poland, I know, not exactly the biggest world powers, but Europe collectively is Israel's biggest trading partner. It's their biggest source of tourists. It's their second biggest supplier of weapons after the United States. Europe is what expands the pro-Israel sphere from a niche American thing into a broad Western coalition. So any chip in that, it's a big deal. And then 2026, the Iran war hits.
The U.S. and Israel have launched strikes and a major military operation targeting Iran.
The Ayatollah, the supreme leader of Iran, is dead.
For the first time in history, Iranian officials say the country has closed the Strait of Hormuz following joint strikes from the U.S. and Israel.
Which didn't just offend sensibilities and values in Europe, it really messed up their economies.
The country is facing widespread disruption as fuel protests continue, with major roads blocked and shortages beginning to emerge.
So pretty soon you got stuff like this.
Il est évident qu'il nous faut pouvoir hausser le ton dans les sanctions.
This is Belgium's foreign minister.
Suspension à tout le moins partielle de l'accord d'association entre Israël et l'Union européenne.
He is talking about trade sanctions on Israel, the kind of thing you do to a hostile rogue state. He even went on to say that Belgium would support a total EU boycott. Here, let's zoom in on Europe. because it's not just Belgium. Spain, Ireland, and Slovenia are also calling for the EU to sanction Israel. Ukraine threatened sanctions too, over Israel importing grain from its Russian-occupied territory. Israel stopped the stolen grain import, but the threat is still hanging. Also remember, we saw that Italy suspended a defense cooperation deal. But the really big turn has been France. France recently closed its airspace to Israeli flights carrying weapon shipments. It's a symbolic step, sure, but a big enough warning shot that Israel, in response, halted all arms purchases from France. This is a real loss for Israel. French weapons make up a ton of Israel's imports. Like, check this out. You can see it here. This is the EU data for every European arms sale. And if you look at the top arms sales to Israel, a ton of them are from France. Like, all the biggest ones. You must wonder if Israel did this to preempt France from doing it first. You know, you can't break up with me, I break up with you. Anyway, the point is, this is effectively a quasi-self-imposed French arms embargo on Israel, which joins a Spanish arms embargo imposed a few months earlier. So, yeah, this is Europe on Israel today. You can see, it's a pretty meaningful pivot. But now we gotta talk about the US.
The time is now for us to end all U.S. military aid to the extremist Netanyahu government.
This is Senator Bernie Sanders recently introducing a resolution that would block all U.S. arms sales to Israel. It did not pass, but it was closer than you might guess, 40 to 59.
On this vote, the yeas are 40, the nays 59. The motion is not agreed to.
And like the UN votes or the EU threats, this was about sending a signal. 40 US senators voted for an arms embargo. That is a message that almost half of the American political system is ready to really turn on Israel. And that's not just a signal to Israel, which, let's face it, seems unlikely to change behavior. It's a signal to all of these other countries that global pro-Israel coalition is getting closer and closer to breaking apart. So it's time to ask why. Why now? The simplest explanation would be that this is all in reaction to Gaza and to the Iran war. But I think the truth is that those things are just catalysts, pushing along a change that's been building for a long time now. This is a foreign policy article warning Israel that had lost Europe. But what's interesting about this is that it's from 2012. One of the things they were reacting to was that 2011 UN vote we looked at before. What looks to us now like it had been a big pro-Israel wave in Europe, at the time, it looked like Europe turning on Israel. And this makes more sense if we rewind a few years more to 2008. This is German leader Angela Merkel speaking to Israel's parliament. And she said basically, we will support you forever because of the Holocaust.
Das heißt, die Sicherheit Israels ist für mich als deutsche Bundeskanzlerin niemals verhandelbar.
But look, it's not just Holocaust guilt behind this. There's a bunch of other stuff, like this sense among democracies worldwide that Israel was a like-minded democracy surrounded by hostile dictatorships, and a sense after September 11 that Israel and the West were on the same side in a global war on terror. Plus, there was some Cold War stuff in there before that. And look, my point is that there's a lot going on in European support for Israel, but it's all anchored to stuff that happened in the past. 1945. Arab-Israeli wars in 67, 73.
Invasion of the Golan Heights by Syria and Egypt.
2001, which means the further that those events drift into memory, the less kind of cultural and political scaffolding there is for that relationship to exist. Especially as Israel does more and more stuff in the present that upsets or hurts or offends its international sponsors. Which is why support for Israel is strongest among older people, whose view of it is rooted in that past. Like, here, look at this. This is Chuck Schumer, the Senate Democratic leader, speaking to AIPAC in 2018.
Of course, we say it's our land. The Torah says it. But they don't believe in the Torah. So, that's the reason there is not peace. They invent other reasons, but they do not believe in a Jewish state. And that is why we in America must stand strong with Israel through thick and thin.
Schumer is obviously coming to this through a kind of Jewish ethno-nationalism. That's why he specifically supports Israel. But he's drawing on, and for a long time got that support because of, a wider sense across Western countries that Israel is quote-unquote like us. But that feeling, that perception, has been steadily eroding, often slowly but steadily, for as long as I have been writing and reporting on Israel and Palestine. Every year, people learn more about Israel's occupation, the settlements. the treatment of Israeli Arabs. And it gets harder and harder to recognize the Israel that we see with our eyes to the Israel that we have been told was this foothold of Western democratic values. And big moments like Gaza or Iran tend to generate a lot of intention that accelerates that shift. This is a recent NBC poll of Americans by age. The green bars measure positive views on Israel, and the yellow bars are negative views. When NBC first ran this back in 2023, older Americans had overwhelmingly positive views of Israel, people my age were more mixed, and younger people were a bit more negative than positive. Fast forward to today, young Americans have turned on Israel 5-1. My generation, it's 2-1 negative on Israel. Older adults are almost split, and only the oldest are solidly pro-Israel. That is how you get 40 US senators voting for an arms embargo on a country that not that long ago they'd have all felt obligated to pledge their undying support to. Public opinion has shifted really quickly. That is part of why you see this. World governments that had always supported Israel suddenly starting to pivot. But there are some big holdouts, especially Germany, the UK, and the US. Things are changing within each of those countries, like we talked about in the US, but their leaders are resisting pressure to break with Israel. I know it might feel difficult to imagine a real, meaningful Western break with Israel, but, relative to just 10 or 15 years ago, which is not that long in geopolitical terms, it is already sort of happening in ways that recently would have felt impossible. Hey guys, just wanted to quickly pause to say, if you want to learn more about Israel, why it is the way it is, the answer, why the US, it's free to sign up. New prepare for the day that the West breaks with them for real. I actually did a bunch of reporting on this plan a few years ago, and what I found is that Israel had quietly achieved a real degree of autonomy from the US. This had a few components. It made peace with a bunch of the countries it used to need American protection from, like Egypt and Saudi Arabia. It learned how to build big weapon systems domestically. So while, it's happy to take American and European exports, it can replace a lot of them if needed. Israeli voters have also embraced more hardline nationalism, so they no longer really pressure their leaders to keep foreign powers happy the way they used to. And in some ways, they even want their leaders to defy those foreign powers by doing things like expanding settlements. And look, yes, it is still true that Israel has a ton to gain from American and European weapons, funding, and support. Those play a big role in empowering Israel's war. My point is that Israel has built up its autonomy so that holding on to that support is no longer existential for them, which frees them up to defy those countries, even the United States. Which is how you get moments like Trump last year tweeting at Israel to not bomb Iran, which of course they still did. Or this year, Trump tweeting at Israel that it was prohibited from bombing Lebanon, which, you guessed it, they immediately did anyway. But I mentioned at the start of this video that Israel's plan to survive a breakup with the West is only sort of working. One component in particular. I wrote about it back in that article. And it's that Israel has been cultivating new allies, right-wing, illiberal democracies that actually admire the very actions that had been pushing away its more traditional allies. An Israeli analyst named Dalia Scheimlet, who told me about this, called it, kind of mockingly, the other friends policy. Let me show you on that map. The big ones are India, Brazil, and Hungary, plus a couple others. Countries whose leaders aren't drawn to Israel because of the past, but because of what it is today, as a symbol of unapologetic militarism and ethno-nationalism. And this worked pretty well for a while. Hungary especially was Israel's best friend in the EU, vetoing all sorts of trade restrictions or sanctions that Europe might have otherwise imposed. But after a couple years, it kind of started to fall apart. Israel's buddy in Brazil lost re-election and got sentenced to jail time for a failed coup attempt. And its ally in Hungary lost power too, actually just a few weeks into the Iran war. And the new guy in power there has already said his government would arrest Netanyahu on war crimes charges if he visited Hungary. Better look at that map again. Brazil out, Hungary out. That Israeli diplomatic resurgence is looking pretty short-lived. So what does all this mean? Look, when I started reporting on Israel and its place in the world back in 2010 or 2011, it was honestly unthinkable to me that the Western pro-Israel world would ever cool to it to the extent that it already has. And I know that to a lot of you, especially if you're on the younger side, that probably sounds crazy. Because if you look around you, it looks like the West supports Israel as unreservedly as it ever has. You know, the US just started an entire open-ended global economy destroying war with Iran basically as a favor to Israel. Western weapons are funding Israel's wars in Gaza and Lebanon. I'm not blind. I see all this. But I am telling you, if you take a step back, if you look at the bigger picture, the kind of longer timeline here, that support is starting to look kind of tenuous. We are not talking about a wide and deep pro-Israel consensus across the Western world anymore. We are talking about a handful of countries that are increasingly isolated in backing Israel, led by leaders who are acting in defiance of their publics, their political parties, even their own core supporters. I'm sure you've heard that Hemingway quote, "Change happens slowly and then all at once." We are in the happen slowly part right now, but it feels like that all at once is coming up fast. We might look back 5-10 years from now and feel that actually it was as of this moment that it was already here.
So obviously he has he has his political opinions, of course, but I think it's a really important message that he's saying for us. I think that's what a lot of us are feeling today, is the tenuous nature of the of what's going on. And sorry for a second. Ugh, sorry. I don't know what just happened. Okay. What happened to my share? Oh, here it is. Okay. So
there is this map that I want.
If you look today, so we'll see that in just this week's news, Mamdani more popular than Netanyahu amongst U.S. Jews, new poll shows. New York City Mayor Zoharan Mamdani, with often outspoken criticism of Israel, has made him a frequent target of Jews and pro-Israel advocates, is viewed more favorably by American Jews than Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The Associated Press did a study of 1,022 Jewish adults nationwide and conducted from June to June 17th and found that 44% of American Jews hold a more favorable opinion of Mamdani and 39% who favored him unfavorably. By contrast, 32% of respondents said they're more favorable of Netanyahu, while 59 said they had a negative view. This is what we are dealing with. The New York Times, which constantly I see these types of things. So it says Mamdani knew he couldn't arrest Netanyahu, but he could denounce him. And then it says in a video message, so Mamdani said that he could not legally arrest Benjamin Netanyahu if he came to New York, but this reinforced his position as the voice of the left. Just yesterday, nearly half House Democrats voted to cut off aid to Israel Wednesday, underscoring a systemic shift in political support for the longtime U.S. ally. So we see what he's saying, even though he has his own he's not a pro-Netanyahu government, that's part of his thing. But we see that actually, this is happening, and I think a lot of us are feeling this same feeling. 1 second. Sorry, I don't know why this is all of a sudden. Okay, so it's something's wrong with the Zoom. But anyway, so I'm just having a problem with this. All right. Anyway, let's go to the next screen. So, I came across this in Rabbi Shlomo Lorentz. He lived from 1918 to October 2009, was an Israeli politician who served as a member of Knesset for Agudas Israel from 1951 to 1984, and was a close confidant of many Gedolim. So he wrote this book called Shadow 3, on the Gedolim, on different rabbis. So he writes the following story. He said, I would now like to record the fascinating remarks made by President Harry Truman, who was the prime consideration in his influencing the world's nation to accord the State of Israel's recognition in 1848. So this is what when he said on the eve of my visits to the United States, I met Harry, I think that's 1948, sorry. At the eve to my visits to the United States, I met Harry Truman in the city where he lived, Kansas City, together with Rabbi Solomon, one of the city's rabbis. President Truman said to me, I am glad of the opportunity to explain to you, Rabbi, why I recognize the state of Israel. My decision in favor of 650,000 Jews wanting a state of their own, while surrounded by tens of millions of Arabs firmly opposed to the state emergence, ran counter to America's political interest. Opposition in America to this policy was so fierce that one of the newspapers in the city where I ran a headline, Truman the Traitor. As a child, he continued, I grew up as a neighbor of several Jewish families whom I held in esteem. On their Shabbos, I would switch the light on and off in the homes of one of those families, in return of which they gave me a slice of the Shabbos challah. It was my father's custom to read from the Bible every Sunday. When we read about Cyrus, king of Persia, who granted Jews permission to return to the land of Judea and rebuild the temple, I thought to myself, the day will come when I'll be president of the United States, the dream of every American boy, he added, and I, too, shall do what Cyrus did in his day. My dream became reality when I became your president. Chaim Weizmann visited me, bringing a Torah scroll as a gift and asking me to instruct the American ambassador to the United States to support the establishment of the State of Israel. I remember my childhood dreams. Obviously, on its own, a sentimental feeling like this would not have outweighed my responsibility to the interests of the United States. Why then did I nevertheless decide to recognize the states? He then spoke of frightful dangers facing the world due to the atomic bomb. This terrible threat of atomic warfare will continue to threaten the world with destruction, and worse still, leaving the world's inhabitants in the state worse than a simple death. And if, despite this, the will to continue living persists within me, it was only because I believe that just as you Jews saved humanity, a barbarous species, 3,000 years ago with your Torah, today too, the Jewish people will manage to enlighten and heal the cruel hearts of our age and rescue the world from total destruction. Now the rabbi continues, when I returned home, I relayed President Truman's words from the Knesset podium so that the country's chosen leaders might know what the world's leaders expect from the Jewish people. This ought to teach us that the better elements among the Gentile savants are well aware that the Jewish people's role is to serve as a light unto the nation, and through the Torah we can save the world from destruction and make it a better place. If we don't live up to these expectations, our friends will turn our backs on us and act according with their own interests, preferring hundreds of millions of Arabs and 1 billion Muslims over a handful of Jews. It's a very, very powerful statement that he says, and it really reminds us of our responsibility as a nation, of what we're supposed to do. We are supposed to be the light onto the nation. So what could we do? So we could be careful on how we talk about Israel and other Jews. I mean, the Chafetz Chaim talks all about Lashon Hara, and people poo-poo Lashon Hara, the idea. But the truth is that it is so important how we talk to each other, how we treat each other. There's too much machlokas in our society. Too many people are having problems with other Jews and all these issues. And especially in Israel, people feel that when they have a problem with Israel, they go public. We could keep our dirty laundry a little bit more private, and it's okay to be criticized. But you don't have to go public about every single thing, and still work to change. We need to study Israeli and Jewish history. We have to be well-informed advocate. Is general more persuasive than someone who's just relying on talking points. I find that NORPAC gives out these talking points every year, but really we need to study. We can't just come in and talk about those things and talking points. It never sat well with me. I feel that we need to be very much more impromptu, be able to talk and understand what the issues are, and be able to answer people's issues with Israel and with and with Jews. Speaking to others either in person or in writing, including on social media. We have to be advocates for Israel and we have to be advocates for Jewish causes. Avoid exaggeration or sharing information before it's verified. This happens all the time. People just share things and then all of a sudden you find out that it's just somebody making something up on social media. There's so much fake stuff. So we have to be careful about. Speak respectfully even when we others disagree. Support organizations working on education. We have to tell positive stories of our experiences in Israel and do not belittle other people's pain when people are you're talking to and they have their own experiences. We have to be not get very defensive, but be confident in what we say and understand that other people may have pain and just still show how we also have pain and what we're going through as Jews. Okay, so that is Kina 6. So we're going to now spend 2 minutes just to read this Kina. And then in 2 minutes, I'll have it on my clock here. We're going to come back and do the next Kina. So that is Kina number 6. Shavas Surim. Okay. Um, Now we'll turn to Kina number 7. Um, okay. Kina number 7. The lo zachar to bris ben habesarim asher berachta levuchur nacha. So we know the bris ben habesarim ben habesarim. Hashem said that we were going to be this great nation. We're going to be like the stars of the sky. And we had all these different brachos. Now we also had the idea that we were going to go into exile, but we were going to come out of exile and we were going to have this, we're going to become this great, great people. And we are a great people. But what happened to us? What happened to all the Jews? Why are we such a small nation? Now, of all the videos, I have a bunch of videos in this. I have a lot of music. I have some music and I have some art and I have poems. I tried to make this complete multimedia. So there were 2 videos that were long. The first one was a little bit long and this one is a little bit long. So I was not going to show it, but I think that it is really well done. And so I'm going to speed it up just a little bit when we show it. And this will be the last long video. Then we'll have other videos, but they're shorter videos. So this is Why the World Hatred for the Jews. And it shows really Jewish history. I think that really plays into the whole idea of all the different tragedies that the Jews have. And it shows how one builds up to the next, how everything builds up from one to the next, and why we are where we are. It is an AI video. AI, again, I said changed, but I think it's just really, really well done, and so worth watching. So I'm going to start it, and then I'm just going to speed it up to 1.25 just to make it a little bit faster.
Why has a single people been hated for more than 2,000 years? It wasn't just Hitler. It wasn't only the Inquisition, nor the Crusaders, nor the Romans. It was almost all of history. From the Roman Empire to the present day, Jews have been persecuted, expelled, blamed, killed. But why? What is so different about them that they have been constant victims for centuries? Prepare yourself for a story that is uncomfortable, intense, and absolutely necessary. But before we dive into this epic story, subscribe to the channel and telling us which other legendary civilization you'd like to see featured here. Imagine a world where you can worship any god as long as you don't refuse to worship all of them. That was Rome, an empire that conquered with swords, but also with religious tolerance. There, Egyptians prayed to their gods, Greeks offered sacrifices, and dozens of peoples brought their beliefs as cultural baggage. As long as they didn't oppose the imperial cult, everything was negotiable. Everything except what could not be negotiated. Absolute loyalty to the emperor, who was considered almost divine. And then they arrived. The Jews were not like the other conquered peoples. They did not bring a pantheon of gods, but only one. One who, to make matters worse, stood above all others. They would not accept images, statues, or deified emperors. To Rome, this wasn't just unusual, it was defiance. It was rebellion disguised as faith. Tacitus, the great Roman historian, something like the first century influencer, had no hesitation in describing them as stubborn and arrogant. They didn't eat like everyone else. They didn't work on Saturdays. They did not worship Caesar. They didn't mix. And worst of all, they didn't want to mix. Emperor Tiberius, fed up with their inflexible customs, ordered their expulsion from Rome in 19 AD. The excuse? They were corrupting Roman citizens with their faith. But the truth was different. Rome didn't know what to do with a people who refused to surrender culturally or spiritually. Tensions increased over time. Religious differences became political suspicions, and suspicion turned into repression. Finally, the Great Bar Kokhba revolt broke out between 132 and 136 AD. It was the last massive attempt by the Jews to free their land, and it failed. The Roman response was brutal. Jerusalem was destroyed, Jews were expelled from their own city, their practices were banned, their traces were erased, and officially, their history as a wandering people began. For Rome, the Jews were a cultural anomaly, a people who did not fit into the great imperial puzzle. For the Jews, Rome was just another pharaoh trying to break their faith. But the damage had been done. From that moment on, an idea took root that would last for centuries, that the Jews were a people impossible to integrate, a foreign body within the body of the empire, and that was more frightening than any army, because fear of the different, when combined with power, almost always ends in persecution. For centuries, the Jews were seen by the Romans as a people difficult to assimilate. But when Christianity began to spread, an even deeper crack appeared, because the new faith, born from Judaism, soon began to see its parent as its enemy. At first, the followers of Jesus were Jews. They followed the same scriptures, the same traditions, the same festivals, but something changed. For them, Jesus was not just a teacher. He was the Messiah, the Son of God, the Savior, and the Jews did not accept him. From that point on, division became inevitable. A powerful and dangerous doctrine emerged, supersessionism. According to this belief, Christianity was not merely the continuation of Judaism, it replaced it. God no longer had a covenant with the Jews. Now his chosen people was the church. That idea changed everything. The letters of the New Testament, especially those addressed to the Romans, began to be interpreted as direct criticism of the Jewish people. It was said that they were blind to the truth, that they existed only to demonstrate divine grace to other nations. The message became distorted, and resentment grew. It did not take long before Christian leaders began labeling Jews as killers of Christ. St. John Chrysostom, one of the great orators of the church, called them impious and enemies of God. And his word was not just faith, it carried authority. As early as the 2nd century, the Council of Elvira forbade Christians from marrying Jews or even sitting down to eat with them. And this segregation became customary, but it did not take long for hatred to turn into blood. In the late 11th century, Pope Urban II called for the First Crusade. The goal? To liberate the Holy Land from Muslim control. But many crusaders, before even reaching Jerusalem, decided to practice their zeal by attacking Jewish communities in Europe. In cities like Worms, Mainz, Cologne, and Metz, thousands of Jews were brutally murdered. In Speyer, even the bishop tried to protect them, but without success. They were offered a choice, conversion or death. To the Crusaders, the Jews were internal enemies, guilty of having rejected Christ, and therefore they deserved no mercy. What for some was a holy war, for others was an endless massacre. The message was clear. Their loyalty to their faith made Jews permanent targets. Christianity, which preached love for one's neighbor, found exceptions when it came to the people who killed the Messiah. And so, theological difference turned into systematic violence, a spiritual rupture that never fully healed, and that planted the seeds of modern hatred. After the Crusades, hatred against Jews found new ways to justify itself. Accusing them of killing Christ was no longer enough. Now darker and more dangerous rumors began to circulate. It all began in Norwich, England in 1144. A boy was found dead, and without any evidence, a monk accused the Jews of having murdered him as part of a ritual. From that moment on, one of the longest lasting and bloodiest lies in history was born, the blood libel. The narrative was absurd but effective. Jews kidnapped and killed Christian children to use their blood in religious rituals. It did not matter that there was no proof. It did not matter that rabbis denied it again and again. Truth no longer mattered, only fear did. And with fear came looting, torture, and massacres. Many rulers saw in these accusations an opportunity. They could confiscate property, erase debts, and blame a common enemy. What better way to consolidate power than to point at someone who could not defend themselves? But the lies did not stop there. In church synods, increasingly humiliating measures were imposed. In 1215, the Fourth Lateran Council decreed that Jews had to wear distinctive clothing. That way, anyone could identify them and avoid them, or point at them, or attack them. It was a meticulously designed system of exclusion. And if they could not mix freely or work like everyone else, how were they supposed to survive? Here, another key piece of the puzzle appears: money. The church forbade Christians from charging interest on loans, but trade continued to grow. Someone had to fill that gap, and that someone was the Jews, not out of greed, out of necessity. Since they were barred from owning land, joining guilds, or practicing common trades, money lending became one of the few paths left open to them. And that made them even more hated. They became the lenders of Europe, bankers to kings and merchants. And soon, the narrative shifted again. Now it was said that Jews were greedy, corrupt, obsessed with gold. The stereotype was complete. Art helped reinforce it. In churches and public squares, grotesque images were carved of Jews suckling from a sow, the infamous Judensau, as a symbol of absolute contempt. Some of those sculptures still exist today, like stone scars that time has refused to erase. Hatred no longer needed logic. It had history, religion, politics, and now economics as well. Jews were not only considered guilty for what they believed, but also for how they survived. And surviving in that era was almost a crime. The 14th century. Europe is burning with fever. The Black Death sweeps across the continent like a cursed shadow, devouring entire cities. There is no cure, no explanation, only death and terror. In times like these, logic is the first thing to die. Someone spread a rumor the wells were being poisoned. By whom? By the Jews, they said, because they were not getting sick as often, because they lived in close-knit communities, because they were different. And in many minds, different meant guilty. In 1348, a man named Amy was brutally tortured until he confessed that, under orders from a rabbi, he had contaminated water sources in Venice and Toulouse. That confession, extracted through screams, was enough to light the fuse. What followed was a wave of irrational violence. In Strasbourg, on February 14th, 1349, nearly 900 Jews were burned alive in a public square. In Basel, the entire Jewish community was exterminated. In Zurich and Geneva, the pogroms were just as merciless. But the plague did not stop, and as the number of dead increased, so did the thirst for revenge. It did not matter that there was no evidence. It did not matter that Jews were also dying from the plague. For many, the lie had already become sacred truth, and once again, fear turned into an excuse for extermination. According to some estimates, nearly 60% of European Jews died during the plague years, but not from the disease, from the flames. Pope Clement VI himself tried to stop the massacre, issuing papal bulls defending the Jews. But it was like trying to extinguish a wildfire with words. The mob did not want reason, it wanted blood. And even in the midst of horror, there were exceptions. In Milan, for example, the Duke chose to protect the Jews. He knew they were essential to the economy. There, the community survived. But it was a solitary exception on a continent in flames. The plague did not only kill bodies, it killed consciences. And when it ended, it left behind empty towns and hearts filled with hatred. anti-Semitism was no longer just prejudice. It was a habit, an automatic reaction. Because when an entire society learns to blame the same group, truth stops mattering. The 19th century. Europe vibrates with scientific advances. Progress seems unstoppable. Electricity, locomotives, telescopes, vaccines. But alongside science, pseudoscience emerges. And in that climate, anti-Semitism mutates once again. It is no longer only about religion or economics or fabricated rituals. Now the argument is biological. In 1879, a German journalist named Wilhelm Marr coined a new word, anti-Semitism. He did so to remove the religious element and transform it into something supposedly rational. The new narrative claimed that Jews were not simply different, they were another race, an inferior one, incompatible with European civilization. Intellectuals like Arthur de Gobineau wrote treatises on the inequality of human races. Eugenics, a distorted and manipulated branch of biology, began to gain influence. It classified peoples according to genetic quality, and you can guess where Jews were placed in that hierarchy. Once again, science was used as a weapon. With these theories came concrete restrictions. Jews were excluded from universities, barred from certain professions, and prevented from marrying non-Jews. In several countries, their opportunities to immigrate were drastically reduced, and all of this was justified by so-called scientific studies. But the hatred did not stop there. In 1894, the Dreyfus Affair shook France. Alfred Dreyfus, a Jewish army officer, was falsely accused of treason. The press condemned him before the trial even began. Public opinion demanded his head. Although he was later exonerated, the message had already been sent. Being Jewish was enough to be suspected. That same spirit fueled conspiracy theories that still survive today. One of them was the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, a fraudulent text claiming that Jews had a secret plan to dominate the world. Despite being exposed as a fabrication multiple times, many still believe it. And so, with ink and paper, the ground was prepared for something far worse. Because when racism disguises itself as science, hatred no longer needs justification, it becomes law. It becomes policy. It becomes inevitable. After the First World War, Germany was broken, defeated, humiliated, ruined. In that desperation, millions searched for answers, a culprit, a face for their pain, and one appeared. Adolf Hitler, a frustrated veteran, found in anti-Semitism his most powerful message. He did not invent it. He inherited it and turned it into doctrine. In his worldview, Jews were the root of every evil. Economic crisis, moral decay, communism, capitalism, everything. They were, he claimed, a racial cancer, and the only solution was to remove it. In 1935, the Nuremberg laws legalized hatred. Marriages between Jews and non-Jews were banned. Citizenship rights were revoked. Jews were excluded from schools, universities, and public office. They were no longer neighbors, no longer Germans. They were others. When the Second World War began, that exclusion turned into confinement. First came the ghettos, like the one in Warsaw, sealed neighborhoods overcrowded without food or medicine, surrounded by barbed wire. Then came the transports, cattle cars, not to prisons, but to factories of death. In January 1942, at the Wannsee Conference, high-ranking Nazi officials drafted what they called the final solution to the Jewish question. It was the coldest phrase ever used to plan genocide. A perfectly organized machinery was born. Auschwitz, Treblinka, Sobibor, Majdanek, camps with one objective: extermination. Upon arrival, prisoners were separated. The fit were sent to forced labor, the rest to the gas chambers. Doctors like Josef Mengele carried out inhuman experiments. Children, twins, pregnant women all became test subjects, and when they were no longer useful, they were killed. But perhaps the most chilling reality is this: it was not only the Nazis. Across Europe, ordinary people, neighbors, employees, shopkeepers collaborated in the deportations. Some out of fear, others out of hatred, many out of indifference. In just a few years, 2/3 of Europe's Jewish population was murdered. It is estimated that more than 6 million people died, not from disease, not from war, for being who they were. And when the world saw the ovens, the piles of bodies, the suitcases labeled with names, it was too late. Centuries of hatred had reached their climax, and the civilization that considered itself modern and rational had failed in the most brutal way imaginable. Today, anti-Semitism no longer disguises itself only as religion or science. Sometimes it disguises itself as politics, as ideology, as activism. But the mechanism is the same, turning one group into the scapegoat for everything. The language changes, the violence does not. And the most dangerous part is that we have been here before. History does not repeat itself exactly, but it does repeat its patterns: isolation, suspicion, lies, silence, the habit of looking away. Hatred does not disappear on its own. It is inherited, it is taught, it reinvents itself. And if it is not confronted with memory, education, and empathy, it returns. Because every time anti-Semitism resurfaces, it does not come back with torches and uniforms. It comes with soft words, with harmless jokes, with comments that normalize contempt. Until one day, it is too late. Remembering is not an option, it is an obligation. Because if we forget what happened, we will live it again. The solution is not found only in laws or memorials. It lies in living memory, in recognizing the warning signs, in educating, in speaking out, in refusing to stay silent when hatred disguises itself as opinion. Remembering is not about looking backward, it is about preventing the same abyss from opening again. Let it not be only about never again, but about not even once again.
Well, I thought that was a very important video to watch. And that really summarizes all the things that we are, um, are, are talking about today, all the different problems, all the different issues that we face as a Jewish people throughout history. Um, if you Oh, so because of all this, I decided to have one thing is too heavy, so just a 2-second light comedy just to kind of break the tension a little bit on this.
The game's about to start. Sweetie, which teams are playing? Spain is playing against Argentina. Okay, which team are we going for? I'm not sure. I was thinking maybe we go for Spain. Are you crazy? We can't go for Spain. There was the Spanish Inquisition. Oh, Matt, you're totally right. Fine, let's go for Argentina. No, we definitely can't go for Argentina. After World War II, they let in a lot of Nazis. It was disgusting. Let's just go for Spain. Now that you think about it, Spain has a guy that raises the Palestinian flag every time they score a goal. Really? Okay, so what are we doing? We have to think about it this way. Which team hates us less? Hey Google. Alexa. How many anti-Semitic attacks have there been in Argentina? 1 second. The president of Argentina, he loves Israel. And not only that, Argentina's colors are blue and white. The same colors as Israel. Rip them apart, Argentina! 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 You know, I'm so lucky, Baruch. I get to watch basketball with my son.
Very cute, cute video. So we'll just, what we can do, don't just stand by, stand up. The world's a dangerous place to live, not only because of the people who are evil, but because of the people who don't do anything about it. Albert Einstein. Very important quote. And it's up to us to do something about all this. So those were the two real long videos that I had. I have shorter videos, but now what we'll do is we'll stop and we'll say keynote number 7. Again, 2 minutes on keynote number 7. Eicha atzta ba'apecha. Okay. Um, so the Kina number 8, Avchin Bechi Yilel Midbar. So this is, I see the crying in the desert. So what does he do? Evchana Leal Milel Midbar Midbar. So he's going to make a connection between the two different midbars. When we got the midbar, when we got the Torah, and the midbar when the spies, when they weep for no reason. So it says V'tisal kol ha'edah. If we look onto the right, Vayitnu es kolam vayibku. That what happened? Bnei Yisrael, after they heard this, the report of the spies, they cried. Amar Rabba, Amar Rav Yochanan, Osa Hayom, Erev Tisha B'Av Haya. That time was Erev Tisha B'Av. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Kain Bachu B'Chia Shalchinam. Since you're crying for no reason, Ani Akava Lahem B'Chia L'Doros. I'm going to make it that this day is going to be, you're going to cry. It doesn't say this day, but that you're going to cry for generations. So what was the reason that they cried? What was it? So the Gemara in Sota has a powerful thing. So it says, so it says on what they said. This is later on when it was repeated in Devarim. So it says, "Vani beinenu kachavim v'chein hayinu beinai." Right, that they see us as grasshoppers, and so we are in our eye, in their eyes. Amarav me sharshia, meraglim shakre havu. They were liars. They were liars. These spies. Bishleim avani beinenu kechagavim. Yes, if we wanted, he wanted to say that we see ourselves as grasshoppers. Okay, but el v'chein hayinu beinehem. How do you know? Menah How do you know what they saw? No, you're just putting in their mind. This is what they think of us. And it's very powerful. I was going to read the story, but I found a video from Y.Y. Jacobson who also spoke about this. I had this whole text, and then I saw this video, and I'm like, okay, this is great. I'd rather show it, I guess, as a video, even though we've been seeing a bunch of videos. But this is such a great story, and it's a short video, but it's very powerful.
The most colossal failure of the Shin Bet, Israel's domestic intelligence agency, was its failure to see October 7th coming, despite the many signs. A result of hubris and arrogance and a lack of understanding caused disaster. And a few weeks ago, Israel confirmed the appointment of a new head for the Shin Bet, Major General David Zini. David is the oldest of 10 children. His parents are Rabbi Yosef and Penina Zini. Rabbi Yosef Zini is the rabbi of Ashdod. David himself is a yeshiva graduate, a Torah-observant Jew, and a father to his own 11 children. At the IDF retirement ceremony of his son, as he was entering the Shin Bet, Rabbi Yosef Zini shared the following remarkable story with a message to his son. My mother and grandmother, he said, were the only ones of their families to survive Auschwitz. One day, while in Auschwitz, an SS officer was outraged at one of the Jewish women who was so weak she had failed to fulfill her work duty. She sat down in utter exhaustion. The screams of the officer did not help this poor woman get up and continue working. She was just completely depleted. So he sent his dog to attack her, and the vicious dog tore her flesh off her body. My late grandmother approached this SS monster and slapped him in the face twice. So he pulled out his gun to shoot my grandmother, but the gun got stuck. He became even angrier, and he ordered that my grandmother be punished with 90 lashes. At the end, her body was completely purple. She was returned to the barracks unconscious. She remained that way for 9 days. When she opened her eyes and mouth, after 9 days, the first sentence that came out of her mouth was, "It was worth it."
שלב ראשון, לתת סטירה לאויב בכל מחיר. שלב שני, לכבד את דתנו ואת אמונתנו.
At the end of the war, the two of them, my mother and grandmother, were sent with 2,000 Jewish women on a 650-kilometer death march in the snow, which ended in Innsbruck, Austria. Only 200 women survived the march. When they arrived there, the American soldiers were frightened by these skeletons. They seemed like dead spirits or walking ghosts. In their fear, the soldiers called their priests. The priests approached the women and said, "Are you aliens?" And they said, "No, we're Jewish." That's when the priests went and called the rabbis of the Allied forces who liberated Europe. One of these rabbis was my late father, Rabbi Zini said. He was a chaplain, and when he saw the frightening spectacle, he said to his Jewish friends, "This is what is left of the people of Israel. This is what we're going to do. Each of us is going to take one of these girls as a wife, and we will rebuild our people from the ashes." And so my father married my mother, Rachel, a skeleton from Auschwitz, and I, Yosef Zini, was born. And thank God, smack in the middle of the Yom Kippur War in 1973, our oldest son, David, was born, together with his twin sister, when there was no electricity in Jerusalem and 16 inches of snow. Rabbi Yosef Zini continued, "To be a Jew is to take a long breath, knowing that from every crisis, we rise higher and higher. My mother used to say that the two most beautiful days in her life were the day that she was liberated from Auschwitz and the day when she saw her grandson David become a general in the IDF. When his grandmother slapped that SS monster twice in the face, she did not think she would ever survive. She came as close as can be to the brush of death. But she could not stand by idly as a Jewish woman was being torn to pieces by an SS dog. And the result, her grandson becomes the head of the Shin Bet to ensure that the Nazis of today will never be able to tear apart the flesh of our brothers and sisters in our eternal homeland. This is the eternal flame we celebrate on Hanukkah, and you can't even describe it in words. It comes from your deepest, purest essence, that space inside of you in which your soul and God are fused, are one forever and ever. There is a safety and love that is infinite and limitless. Happy Hanukkah.
Very, very powerful. So what do? So we show our Jewish pride. I love being Jewish so much, more than anyone else could hate me for it. It's very powerful. Okay, so we'll now have 2 minutes to read Kinot number 8. 2 minutes. Next Kinot. So the next Kinot is the Kinot about the loss of the kahuna. There were 24 mashmaros. There were 24 different um, uh, um, what's two tours of duty, and they were the actual last fighters. The Kohanim were the last fighters of when it came to defend the Beis Hamikdash. I saw this interesting thing. It says in March 1916, Rabbi Joseph H. Hertz. This was written by uh, uh, Gil's student. He's a friend of mine from a long time ago. Um, she wrote in March 1916, Rabbi Joseph Hertz, chief rabbi of the United Hebrew Congregations of the British Empire, was asked by the British government whether Kohanim should be given a religious exemption from military draft. He replied in the negative, which started a whole massive debate over the matter. The Leeds Beth Din publicly objected to the rabbi's ruling for two reasons. And then he goes through that on the article. It's in the Jewish link called The Kohen Warrior. In the end, it seems that the chief rabbi Hertz won the day. Rabbi Herzog served as chief rabbi of Israel when it became a state. He did not attempt to implement a military exception for Kohanim, not even an option for Kohanim to remain in the administrative functions. Perhaps he changed his mind, or maybe he believed that in serving Israel's army is different from serving in the army of a foreign country that does not face existential military challenges. So, um, I thought about this very interesting article. The article is we did not know we did not know that the Ethiopian people, and we had actually a speaker who talked all about this once at Or Torah. So that they did not know when they came to Israel that there was no Beis Hamikdash. They never got that message. So they lived with that message. Listen to this. Up until the age of 9, I lived in a world where the Beis Hamikdash, the Holy Temple of Jerusalem, actually existed. Like my parents and teachers, I believed that the Second Temple stood in the place in Jerusalem, and I was literally made of pure gold. I grew up hearing about the Kohanim, the holy priests, and how they worked in the temple. I fell asleep listening to the stories about the halo hovering over Yerushalayim, about the Jews who merited to dwell in the holy city cloaked in white garments, people blessed with pure hearts, clear and clean thoughts, and devoid of sin. Overhead, I would imagine the Shekhinah, the divine presence, as angels. Deep within Ethiopia, my family and I, along with the neighbors from the Beit Israel community, hoped to merit to return to Jerusalem one day. We prayed and performed customs and expressed our yearning for Zion. When we slaughtered livestock, we'd turn the animals' heads towards Jerusalem. And whenever we noticed a flock of storks above our fields, we would chant a song in which we requested that the birds deliver our prayers and the hope to return to our homeland. I wish in a way that I also had that, this view with it's not jaded, the idea that it's real, that this is something real in our lives, and it's not just the kotel that it happened 1,000 years ago, but it's actually right in front of us. We knew the first temple had been destroyed. During the first 17 days of the month of Av, we would fast during the daytime. We chanted special lamentations, Amarat, and practiced other customs of mourning prevalent among the Jewish communities. We even continued ritual sacrifices as a distant memory of the temple times. How strong was our belief in the sanctity of Jerusalem in our homes and in Ethiopia? The most powerful educational concept that restored within children and adults like Ethiopia, passed down from generation to generation, was the awareness of the need for us to safeguard the purity of our hearts and their deeds in order that we would one day be worthy of entering Jerusalem, heaven on earth. The ideal of Jerusalem was the force that provided us with the stamina to preserve during the arduous trek through the desert. It was the dream that kept us going. We wanted to reach it, achieve it. We buried our beloved family members. She actually lost her grandmother on this trek, who was, I don't know if she talks about it. I don't remember if she talks about it in an article, but she has another piece just on her grandmother. We buried our beloved family members, left possessions behind willingly, and lost them to vicious thieves. We struggled to keep going despite the terrible conditions and the hunger, only because of our goal to reach Jerusalem of gold. And after so many generations stand at the gates of the Holy Temple, then we arrived and discovered that the temple had been destroyed. Jerusalem did not appear as the place I had so badly yearned to reach. Learning about the destruction of the temple only as I reached the gates of the holy city was an earth-shattering disappointment, and it left a great void in me that I had been unable to fill. My father, who never ceased to dream, even for 1 minute, about Jerusalem and the temple, saw Jews traveling on Shabbos, witnessed the immoral behavior desecrating the sanctity of the city. I could hear his heart breaking anew each time we experienced it. With the passing of years, I attempted to fill the void within caused by the absence of the temple by dedicating myself to my work and to fulfilling my personal dreams. Only upon maturing and having overcome the struggles of integration into Israel society did I begin to understand how fortunate I was to have grown up believing that the temple exists. I succeed at forging my personality with the goal of being worthy to visit the temple. The angels that I had imagined inhabiting Jerusalem in some way were my parents who lived their lives striving to be pure enough to merit Jerusalem. Only after many years in Israel, having gained a familiarity with the country and its people, did this void become a strength and asset. And as cognizant of how, as a result of the journey we made, I was fortunate to have the time stand still and experience the steep connection to the temple that in our minds and hearts still existed, resonated within me for many years. Among the current generations and hundreds of previous generations since the destruction of the Second Temple, it is I and my fellow Ethiopian Olim who have experienced firsthand the reason for the loss of the Beis Hamikdash. Senseless hatred and social injustice. More than other people, we can understand the meaning of the destruction of the temple and the loss in our lives these days. I'll show a very quick video. Maybe I won't show a very quick video. Let's see. Oh, here it is. So this is
Texas
somebody,
and learning about the
this is somebody who's an Ola Hadash. He's a lone soldier, and he'll tell you how he views being a soldier in the army.
not only my family's involvement in what we each did from America to contribute to the wars of Israel and the establishment of the state, but the just the miracles and the sacrifices. In my mind, the IDF was holy. It was holy. When I was joining the IDF, I felt like I was becoming like a high priest of Israel. And my father, I remember he came to my tekes, my celebration, where I got my beret, and never did I see my father weep, just freely weep as seeing me in that uniform. Right? The IDF uniform had a sanctity that paralleled the garments of the high priest of the temple. And while I know that many, particularly in the ultra-Orthodox world, would bristle at such an analogy, in my mind it was true, and it still is true. I mean, so many of the words are even the same. For example, the ephod, the vest of the high priest. I was actually looking for graphics depicting these different garments of the high priest, which I could legally share, but I couldn't find anything that I could legally share. It was all like copywritten, but it looked very much like a priestly version of this ephod. Right, this is my army ephod. It's called an ephod. Right, it's called an ephod. It has in it my magazines. It has the first aid kit. It has all of the different things that I need to fight and to go into battle. That's the ephod. It's called the ephod. Right, and so I was when I'm wearing this ephod and I see the other soldiers, I feel the exact same thing, right? It was worn over the shoulders. The ephod in the temple was worn over the shoulders of the high priest in the temple, just like this is. And that symbolized the way he carried the burden of Israel on his shoulders, right? And when I see our soldiers wearing that same thing, they're carrying the burden of Israel. They're protecting the entire nation.
Get back. Okay. So now we have Kina 10, and we're going to spend 2 minutes just looking at the loss of the high priest. Again, they were the last. It's we're not going to be able to finish. It's a longer Kina, but we'll just start it. Just a little bit for the 24 Mishmaros. Here we see that they were the last, as I said, they were the last. The reason why I brought it is they were the last protectors of the Beis Hamikdash before the destruction. That was one of the many jobs that they did. Okay, Eicha Yashva Chavatzel Sharon, just 2 minutes. We're not going to finish the Kena, but we'll just do some of it. Okay. Again, you have time afterwards, the whole day, to read these keynotes. I just got a taste of this keynote. That was an honor for the Kohanim. Now, the next one tells the story of Yoshia, who was the last real hope, like for Mashiach to change. He took the kingship. We've spoken about him many times, where he took the kingship at a young age, and he found the Sefer Torah from the Devarim. They found the Sefer Torah, and he did a whole big tshuva movement. He had too much faith in the people. He didn't understand exactly where the people were. He was going much faster than they were, and he made a fatal mistake. He didn't allow the king of Mitzrayim, Necho, to pass through his lands. He didn't want war. This Paro of Necho. But he brought war. He didn't want them to pass through, and he was killed in Megiddo. This is a picture of Megiddo today. Here you have a high shot of it. You see it's on a higher plane. And this is a close-up picture here of what you would see when you go on if you would go on a tour of Megiddo. There's a lot. I once gave a whole one year I gave a whole thing on Megiddo. I did a lot of research on Megiddo. Very interesting. A lot of things happen on during Megiddo. I'm not going to go into it now. I think you have videos from past years where I spoke about it. This is a art depiction of the death of Yoshia. Um, so I'll pick one person was to learn about some Jewish history. Um, if you don't know the story of Joseph Trumpeldor, So I felt here now is a good time to learn about a little bit about Jewish history here and some of our um, people who tried to really make a difference and help build the state and help build us as a people to where we are today. So we'll watch this video. It's not.
In 1920, a tiny Jewish farming community found itself in a war zone. The Ottoman Empire had just collapsed, and the French were trying to control the Upper Galilee. Local Arab militias were fighting to stop them. The hills became a no man's land, and a handful of Jewish outposts were caught in the middle. Arab fighters regularly showed up, demanding to search for French soldiers, and they often left with stolen supplies. Until one morning, when more than 100 armed men surrounded the community of Tel Hai. They demanded entry, accusing the farmers of hiding French troops inside. The nervous Jewish residents opened their gates. By nightfall, 8 of them lost their lives, and the settlement was abandoned. What happened that day would become one of the most powerful legends in Zionist history, shaping how generations of Israelis understood sacrifice, courage, and the price of fighting for something greater than yourself. This is the story of Tel Hai. For centuries, this region had been ruled by the Ottoman Empire, but when the Ottomans lost World War I, the Middle East was suddenly up for grabs. Even before the Great War ended, Britain and France had secretly agreed to divide much of the Ottoman territory between themselves. At the same time, Britain had made separate promises to Arab and Jewish leaders that each could form independent states after the war. But all these promises didn't exactly line up. When Britain withdrew from the area of what would eventually become northern Israel and France claimed it as their own, local Arab nationalists were furious. They expected independence, not French rule. Armed militias began resisting the French presence. The region grew unstable, and a handful of tiny Jewish farming communities found themselves in the crossfire. One of these communities was Tel Hai. Now, Jewish leaders were also upset to find this region under French control. They believed the British were more sympathetic to the Zionist cause than the French. So the more land the French controlled, the less would be available for a future Jewish state. But these were small farming communities. Unlike their more powerful Arab neighbors, open revolt against the French was not an option. They decided their best hope for surviving the conflict was to stay neutral. But even so, local Arabs suspected them of collaborating with the French, and life in Tel Hai grew more dangerous by the week. Tel Hai wasn't a sprawling village. It was a small, fortified farm designed to survive in a rough neighborhood. A cluster of stone buildings formed a protective barrier around a single, enclosed courtyard. Zionist leaders debated what to do about these exposed northern communities. Should they evacuate them or try to stick it out? Some argued they were absolutely indefensible, isolated and outnumbered. Why risk lives and waste resources trying to hold small outposts in a region that would likely fall to the French anyway? But others saw it differently. If they wanted a homeland where they wouldn't be dependent on a ruling empire, they needed land. Without these footholds, there was no chance that any of the Upper Galilee would be included in a future Jewish state. And in 1920, no one knew how the borders were going to be drawn. Every community abandoned could mean land lost forever. So instead of evacuating the north, Zionist leaders sent reinforcements. They needed someone who knew how to fight, so they sent Yosef Trumpeldor. Trumpeldor was already something of a legend. He was a Russian Jew who lost his left arm fighting in the Russo-Japanese War. During World War I, he helped organize a Jewish military unit to support the British. He was disciplined, tough, and uncompromising. And now, in the winter of 1919, he arrived in the Upper Galilee to organize the defense of Tel Hai and the other northern outposts. When the residents of Tel Hai saw Trumpeldor riding into town, it must have felt like the cavalry had arrived. He trained the defenders, strengthened their positions, coordinated between the 4 northern communities. Among those who joined him was Devorah Drachler, one of the few women who took part in armed defense, because she refused to take no for an answer. But even with Trumpeldor's reinforcements, Tel Hai remained extremely vulnerable to raids. Armed groups of Arabs still appeared at the gate, demanding to search for French soldiers. Supplies were taken, weapons confiscated. In one especially degrading incident, Trumpeldor and several other defenders were robbed and stripped of their clothes as a public insult by an Arab militia. The message was clear. Even behind stone walls and a heavy gate, Trumpeldor and the rest of the Jews survived only at the mercy of their Arab neighbors. And then, on March 1st, 1920, over 100 armed men, led by a local Bedouin commander, gathered outside the gate of Tel Hai. They demanded to search the place for French soldiers. The residents of Tel Hai were used to these kind of searches, but not like this. Not over 100 men. This felt different. Trumpeldor tried to negotiate with the crowd and ultimately agreed to let a small search party enter the compound. There were no French soldiers to be found, but things were extremely tense. Everyone was armed. People were jittery. Then, a shot. No one knows who fired the first shot. Some accuse the Arab searchers of opening fire. Some say things escalated when a member of the search party tried to confiscate Devorah Drechler's weapon. Others think the first shot may have just been a misunderstanding, a tragic mistake. Either way, the spark was lit. Within seconds, the courtyard erupted in shots. Bullets ricocheted off stone. The firefight lasted for hours. Trumpeldor was shot twice, once in the arm, the other tore into his abdomen. Mortally wounded, he continued issuing orders to the defenders for hours. That evening, the surviving defenders evacuated the wounded and the bodies to a nearby outpost. Trumpeldor didn't survive the night. 8 of Tel Hai's defenders were no longer alive, 6 men and 2 women, including Devorah Drechler. 5 of the Arabs lost their lives as well. The next day, the compound was set on fire and destroyed. In the days after the battle, a story began to circulate. According to the doctor who treated him, as Josef Trumpeldor lay dying, he said, "It is good to die for our country." The line spread like wildfire. For a young Zionist movement struggling to build a future state, the words were powerful. They transformed a tragic firefight into something much larger, a story of sacrifice and resolve, and they turned Trumpeldor into a martyr. Some historians question whether Trumpeldor actually said those words, or if it was just a pleasant fiction created by the doctor to honor Trumpeldor's memory. We'll never know for sure, but we do know that early Zionism was trying to create a new kind of Jewish identity, one rooted not in exile or helplessness, but in self-defense and sovereignty. When the State of Israel was finally established, a new town was founded near Tel Hai called Kiryat Shmona, which means the town of the 8, to honor the 8 defenders who fell at Tel Hai. Today, the original courtyard has been preserved as a historic site, supported by Jewish National Fund USA and its donors across the United States. Tel Hai was a small battle in a chaotic border war. Militarily, it changed almost nothing. But the events of that one chaotic day in 1920 helped inspire a core tenet of Israeli national identity. The Jewish survival could never again depend on the power of others. The Jewish nation must be able to defend itself.
Okay. So this is the oldest keynote. Number 11 was the oldest is one of the oldest keynote. I mean, it's Vayichonin Yirmiyahu on Yeshayahu. So we'll spend 2 minutes looking over this keynote, and then we're going to start moving quicker through some. We're not going to do the next keynote, but we will do actually the next keynote, and then the one after that. We'll start moving a little bit faster with those. Okay, 2 minutes. Vayikonen Yirmiyahu al Yeshayahu. Okay. The next keynote, by the way, with all these keynotes, of all, the problem I had was like what to leave out. I had like there was so many things. Each one, I had to make decisions. I had like another maybe 80, 100 slides of stuff to try to figure out. And each year I do it as new because I want to try to get the most, and what I feel and what's going on and so on. Um, okay, so the next keynote number 13. Um, uh, is Eiko Amar Koris La'av Paratzach. So this promise that Hashem had Ko Savarchu. This is like Ko Savarchu Bnei Yisrael. This is the blessing that we have. And it's the distance again. All that shows the distance. Lama Elokim zanachta lanetzach. Why do you keep abandoning us? It's the feeling of abandonment, the feeling of loss that we have on Tisha B'av during this time of Tisha B'av, um, and so it's the how do we bring back the ko? How do we bring back this idea of this bracha that we have? So Rabbi Sachs has a beautiful idea. You can't have anything Tisha B'av without Rabbi Sachs. It really had such a major impact on the Jewish people, and by his way he phrases everything and his talks and his videos and his books. He really had such a major impact. It was such a big loss for us. Anyway. After this, we'll take a little bit of breaks for videos.
For every Jew today, there are roughly 155 Christians and 120 Muslims. More than 3,000 years later, the words of Moses in Deuteronomy remain true. He said, "The Lord didn't set his affection on you and choose you because you were more numerous than other peoples, for you were the fewest of peoples." We were then, and we are now. So why did God choose this tiny people for so great a task? To be his witnesses in the world, the people who fought against the idols of the age in every age, the carriers of his message to humanity. Why are we so few? Why this dissonance between the greatness of the task and the smallest of the people charged with carrying it out? There's a strange passage in the Torah. In Exodus chapter 30, verse 12, it says, "When you take a census of the Israelites to count them, each one must pay the Lord a ransom for his life at the time he is counted. Then no mishap, no negef will come on them when you number them." The implication is unmistakable. It's dangerous to count Jews. Centuries later, King David ignored the warning and disaster struck the nation. So why is it dangerous to count Jews? Nations take censuses on the assumption that there's strength in numbers. The larger the people, the stronger it is. And that is why it's dangerous to count Jews. If Jews ever believed that their strength lay in numbers, we would give way, God forbid, to despair. In Israel, there were always a minor power surrounded by great empires. In the diaspora everywhere, they were a minority. Where then did Jewish strength lie, if not in numbers? The Torah gives an answer of surpassing beauty. God tells Moses, "Don't count Jews. Ask them to give and then count the contributions." In terms of numbers, we're small. But in terms of our contributions, we are vast. In almost every age, Jews have given something special to the world. The Torah, the literature of the prophets, the poetry of the Psalms, the rabbinic wisdom of Mishnah, Midrash, and Talmud, the vast medieval library of commentaries and codes, philosophy and mysticism. Then, as the doors of Western society opened, Jews made their mark in one field after another, in business, industry, the arts and sciences, cinema, the media, medicine, law, and almost every field of academic life. They revolutionized thought in physics, economics, sociology, anthropology, and psychology. Jews have won Nobel Prizes, out of all proportion to our numbers. The simplest explanation is that to be a Jew is to be asked to give, to contribute, to make a difference, to help in the monumental task that has engaged Jews since the dawn of our history, to make the world a home for the divine presence, a place of justice, compassion, human dignity, and the sanctity of life. Though our ancestors cherished their relationship with God, they never saw it as a privilege. They knew it was a responsibility. God asked great things of the Jewish people, and in so doing, made them great. When it comes to making a contribution, numbers don't count. What matters is commitment, passion, dedication to a cause. Precisely because we are so small as a people, every one of us counts. We each make a difference to the fate of Judaism and the Jewish people. Zechariah said it best, not by might nor by power, but by my spirit, says the Almighty Lord. Physical strength needs numbers. The larger the nation, the more powerful it is. But when it comes to spiritual strength, you need not numbers, but a sense of responsibility. You need a people, each of whom knows that he or she must contribute something to the Jewish and to the human story. The Jewish question is not, what can the world give me? It's, what can I give to the world? Judaism is God's call to responsibility.
Okay. So we'll read this Kinot. Is echo, yeah. Is echo, 2 minutes on this one, and then we're not going to read the next one. But we'll read this, and then we're taking a little bit break from videos for a little bit. Is echo, Amar. Okay. The next Kinot. We're not going to actually read this Kinot. I never could read this Kinot. I don't know. It's still very hard Kinot. Im tochlan onosh imperial olel tifu tipuchim. The idea of the woman eating our child, such desperate situation. I can't even think about that. But I use it as the loss of the child and loss, the death, the loss that we have experiences through the years. A very powerful, oh, sorry, oops, very powerful um, loss. So I saw this from in the book um, uh, night. I remember the night, the most hardest of my life. Eliezer, my son, come here. I want to tell you something, only to you. Come, don't leave me alone, Eliezer. I heard his voice, grasped the meaning of his words and the tragic dimension of the moment, yet I did not move. It had been his last wish to have me next to him in his agony at the moment when his soul was tearing itself from his lacerated body. Yet I did not let him have his wish. I was afraid, afraid of the blows. That is why I remained deaf to his cries. Instead of sacrificing my miserable life and rushing to his side, taking his hand, reassuring him, showing him that he was not abandoned, that I was near him, that I felt his sorrow, instead of all that, I remained flat on my neck, asking God to make my father stop calling my name, to make him stop crying. So afraid was I to incur the wrath of the SS. In fact, my father was no longer conscious. Yet in his plaintive, hollow voice went on piercing the silence and calling me nobody but me. So we'll talk here. This is a story that's going around. I saw it. Deborah pointed out to me from the in the Jewish link. I read the story. It's such a powerful, powerful story. I'm sure many of you heard of it, but if you didn't, I think it's just so important to hear this story. Charlotte Hertzberg, an 8-year-old girl from Muncie, New York, was riding her bicycle near her home when she was struck and killed by a car. The driver, who immediately accepted responsibility for the tragic accident, was the best friend of Charlotte's father, Yuri. At that moment, my wife and I understood that we were facing an enormous challenge and test. Yuri said in his eulogy to his daughter, "My best friend did not do this deliberately. It was a tragic accident, and we're not going to allow this tragedy to tear us apart." Yudi and his wife were determined to transform their tragedy into a force for unity and peace among the Jewish people. The following day, when members of the community came to pay a shiv call, they witnessed an extraordinary sight. Yudi and his best friend, the driver who had struck Charlotte, embracing, crying, literally holding one another up. Nearby, Humri, Charlotte's mother, and the driver's wife held onto each other and wept. Before the Shiva ends, Charlotte's family launched a campaign called Shalom for Charlotte, encouraging Jews everywhere to forgive, let go, move forward. The grieving family is asking people to reach out to friends, relatives, neighbors, and colleagues to release old grudges, resentments, repair broken relationships, and share their stories. Very, very powerful. It reminds us, people always talk about, that Sinas Chinam destroys the Beis Hamikdash, that's bringing us down. But then in their life, they have this same Sinas Chinam, and they can't let go. And so it's time to let go of grudges and trying to move on in our lives. Okay. All right. So we're not going to read that. So let's go to the next one. Mi'etain Roshi Mayim. And so this is about the 10 martyrs. So I had this idea that this story of the 10 martyrs is one we read on Tisha B'Av, and we also read on Yom Kippur. The martyrs actually never happened at the same time. The story is the Kinot is made much later, and it brings people, not even sure all the different people they were necessarily. They definitely didn't live in the same time. So it was all written later. The story was kind of made up of a trial for Yosef because of Yosef, and they sold Yosef for shoes. This whole story is made up. But I was thinking of how about the 10 martyrs today? How about 10 martyrs today that gave their lives, who had given their lives to the Jewish people, and they were killed for it. So I decided to do 10 martyrs, 10 rabbis from the last 10 years who were murdered because they were Jews. They were serving the Jewish community. But when I did it, after I finished, I realized I actually had uh, 11 rabbis, and I was only on year nine. So I decided to take 1 year away from the years and put one to the rabbis. So we're going to hear stories of 11 rabbis from 9 years, and it will make 10 rabbis from 10 years for the 10 martyrs. We'll make it all about the 10 martyrs. Okay, so the first rabbi, February 2026, so it says Israel Rabbi Amos Guetta stabbed to death in Netanya. So who was he? So he was born in 1951, 19th of Adar, 1951. After making Aliyah to Israel, he settled in Netanya, where he lived in several neighborhoods before establishing his permanent home on Einstein Street. There he founded the Rabbi Yitzchak Chai Talib Beis Medrash, which would become the center of his life's work. In his younger years, he worked as a mail carrier while also studying medicine. After approximately 4 years in medical school, he experienced a profound spiritual awakening. He chose Torah over medicine. He left his studies and joined the Or Torah Kollel in Netanya, where he became a devoted student of Rav Shimon Gabbai, a home open to every Jew. Over the years, Rav Gutta became known throughout Israel as a symbol of humility, kindness, and devotion to the Jewish people. His yeshiva was far more a place of Torah study. It became a refuge for hundreds of young people and individuals searching for a direction. Many of you found Rav Gutta a compassionate listener, trusted mentor, and spiritual guide. He would not turn away anybody for help. Meals were always available to those people who were in need, and he gave his guidance. Preserving the heritage of Libyan Jewry alongside his outreach efforts, he dedicated himself to the Libyan Jewish population. He became one of the country's foremost rabbinical authorities, carefully preserving his customs, teaching, and unique heritage. He was killed, and he was shot. And thousands traveled across Israel and abroad, were seeking his blessings and heartfelt prayers, which many beloved brought comfort and salvation. So, he was stabbed. I'm sorry, he was stabbed in Netanya. Next, in December 2025, Rabbi Eli Schlanger, he died in the Bondi Beach. So Rabbi Eli Schlanger was the assistant rabbi of the Chabad Lubavitch in Bondi Beach, Sydney, Australia. He was killed Sunday evening in a terrorist attack during the public Hanukkah celebration that he was hosting in Bondi Beach Park. He was 41 years old, a key organizer of Chabad Bondi annual Hanukkah by the Sea event. On the first of the holiday's 8 nights, Rabbi Schlanger was walking around talking, performing mitzvahs with members of the community when two gunmen opened fire and the crowd, killing approximately 2,000 people. At least 15 were killed in the attack. The father of 5 was among them. Dozens more were wounded. Just a year earlier, speaking to Chabad around the time of 2004 Hanukkah celebration, Rabbi Schlanger said that in the face of rising anti-Semitism, Jews don't hide, they increase to spread more light. Be Jewish, be more Jewish, act every day, act more Jewish, and appear more Jewish, he said. This was his philosophy that he lived by during his 18 years serving the Jewish community of Sydney. On November 2024, we lost Rabbi Zvi Kogen. He was murdered in the UAE. Who was he? So he was born in 1996 in Ramat Shlomo, Jerusalem. As a teenager, Rabbi Kogen learned at Yeshiva Mo'otz Chayil in Yerushalayim. And then he learned at the Mir Yeshiva. Before he moved to the UAE, he served in IDF in the Givati brigade. His wife Rivka, a U.S. citizen, they were married in 2022. She joined him in Dubai, and she was the niece of Gabriel Herzberg, the Chabad chief rabbi who was murdered by his wife by Islamic militant group in 2008 Mumbai terror attacks. Next, Rabbi Elimelech Wasserman, murdered by Hamas. He was born in Haifa, so this is in 2003. He was murdered by Hamas. He studied at the Viznitz Hasidic Yeshiva in Haifa. After his marriage to the daughter of Rav Asher Freund, he pursued a career in Jewish law. He studied under Rav Yosef Cohen, and then he received his smicha in Israel. His last position, he served as a judge in Ashdod. He was a dayan in Ashdod, and was involved in many monetary matters, cases for about 10 years. He served on the Beis Din for Dine Mamanos. He was considered one of the senior and more experienced judges with experience and extensive knowledge of the Talmud. Legal rulings. Chief Rabbi Yitzchak Yosef called him a scholar of wisdom and a very virtuous individual. He added that the rabbinical courts will miss his majestic image that influenced only goodness and kindness. The next one in 2022, we lost Rav that's a typo. It's Rav Shalem. Rav Shalem, Rav Yaakov Shalem of the Pardes Katz neighborhood in Bnei Brak. He was a father of 5, and he was murdered in his car. He was survived by his 5 children, and he was killed by a Palestinian gunman along with 4 other victims. Also on that same March 23rd, another rabbi was killed in that same attack, Rabbi Avishai Yecheskel. He's 29, a rabbi and father. He was from Bnei Brak, and he was killed by this Palestinian. The last night, he said this, his brother during the eulogy said, "Last night the world turns upside down. This is such a terrible loss. You called me and told me you heard the gunfire. You were afraid for my safety. You told me stay indoors. And then I didn't hear from you anymore. You cared more about us than you did yourself. You shielded your child with your own body. You always made sacrifice. You always loved. You always made me happy. And your siblings, your nieces and nephews, you were simply wonderful." Next, in 2021, we lost Rav Yehuda Diamantman. He was from Shovre Shomron in the West Bank, and he served as a rabbi there, and he was killed in a shooting attack near the yeshiva where he was on December 21st. I don't really have many more information on him. In March 2020, Rav Yosef Newman, he was a father of 7. He was 72 years old. He was killed in an anti-Semitic attack in Monsey. Rav Newman was born in 1947, post-Holocaust, in a town in Hungary. His father was a rabbi, and he was a devoted chassid, a Torah scholar. 9 years old at the time, Rav Yosef he was carried over the border in a bag by his a bag with his mouth stuffed to prevent him from calling out. The family remained for a while in Vienna, where he served as a rabbi. Yet, while there, his focus was global. One of his fundamentals of Judaism is the observance of a nida. Recognizing this mitzvah was becoming neglected, the rabbi printed literature in dozens of languages, where he then distributed to communities all over the world. This was a labor of love. And he worked closely with Chabad rabbis around the world to distribute all types of booklets. Next, Rav Achiad Ettinger. He's was killed into March 2019. He was an Israeli rabbi, educator. He was the dean of Oz V'Emuna Hester Yeshiva in Tel Aviv. He had 12 children from age 1 to 20. He became widely known after being fatally wounded while attempting to stop a terrorist attack. He was trying to stop the attack, and then he got killed. He chased away the terrorist who ended up killing him, and he ended up saving many, many people. Next, Rav Raziel Shavach. Raziel Shavach was the father of 6. He was the unofficial rabbi of Chavat Gilad. He was the Rebbe in the yeshiva. He was a Moel. He was a medic. He worked for the Magen Adon. And finally, in 2018, Rav Itamar Ben Gal. He was 29-year-old father of 4, and he taught in the yeshiva in Har Bracha. So these are the martyrs that we have today. Some of the martyrs that we have today. I use this time to also recognize the loss that we had in our own community. And so we had a number of losses. And so I did it in alphabetical order. And so here are some of the people who we lost and a little bit about who they were. So Sun Yeshon, Sarah Geller. Sun was born after the Korean War to a very poor family where her father served as a lifetime officer in the Korean Army. Sun decided to put all into education, working from early morning to night. She walked far to school and took many extra classes and study clubs, learning and mastering English to such a degree that she became an English teacher for a semester before an opportunity opened up for her to come to America and study at SUNY Buffalo. She did not take this opportunity lightly. During that time, she got 2 master's degrees in linguistics and computer science. She met James Geller, who became the love of her life and converted to Judaism, where even here she was on the top of Rav Bomzer's conversion class. Her education did not end here. After moving to West Orange for James' job, now Sarah would get her PhD and MBA at Rutgers. This would lead her to become a professor at CUNY Staten Island, teaching everything from management information systems to cybersecurity, with at one point having 3 different offices in Rutgers, CUNY, and the CUNY Graduate Center, winning a rare top educator award. She loved teaching so much, and she was so beloved that she taught literally until the very end of her life. Besides the amazing life as a student educator, her true legacy was the amazing family that she raised. Sandy was married to Daniela Sharon Levine, and through them they would eventually become a grandmother to Aviv, and Catherine, who has been devoted to her through the very difficult journey at the end of her life. I was there at the very end of her life, and she was a big inspiration. The way she davened, it was really amazing. She's definitely going to be missed. Helen Mina Gaffner. Helen Mina Gaffner, age 101. This is Judy Schanzer's mother. Passed away on February 13th, 2026. She was 101 years old. Born on April 23rd, 1924, Helen was a cherished member of a community and family. She was a resident of West Orange, New Jersey. Helen was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. She lived in New Rochelle from 1957 to 1967, then moved to Roslyn Estates until 2002, where she settled in West Orange. She was the beloved late wife of Theodore Gaffner. Helen is survived by her daughter Judith A. Osborne Schanzer and her husband, Dr. Bernie Schanzer, and their son, Daniel Gaffner, and his wife, Susan Shapiro. She was a proud grandmother of 9 and great-grandmother of 29 and great-great-grandmother of 8. Amir Tashem, all of us. Helen was involved in the community for a long time, member of Congregation B'nai Shalom of West Orange. Her dedication to her faith and community was evident throughout her life, and she was a member of Hadassah in every community she was at. Natalie James. Natalie James. So Natalie James was born on June 12th, 1933, March 30th, 2026. She was at every function. That's her in my backyard. That she came to every single barbecue. She was at every shul function in town, not just Or Torah. Every single thing, not only in town, anywhere around. She went to every shul function. She was 92 years old when she passed away after a month-long illness on March 30th, 2036, only 3 days before Pesach. She was telling me how she couldn't wait to go to my son's wedding. She was well loved by her community, friends and community. No matter who befriended, whether young or old, she had a remarkable ability to relate well to them, and make them feel unique. She never missed an occasion to celebrate with friends, attend a class or event, comfort an individual in mourning, or volunteer to help others. She expressed strong convictions to uphold what she felt is just and fair, as well as to help children feel loved and respected, and ways to fight anti-Semitism. She had a strong sense of community and was active in Agudas Israel, Congregation Or Torah, B'nai Shalom, Chabad, who was a strong supporter of Israel and visited her relatives during the summer of 2023 to show her support under difficult times. She possessed the resourcefulness and quiet determination of her generation to live life fully with zest and loyalty. Her wonderful companionship is missed. Thanks to Debbie for putting this together. I'll tell you that she was also very thankful for every single thing that people did for her. She showed so much hakaras hatov. I read I used to read the Megillah for her when she couldn't come to shul, and she never let me forget it. Every time she saw it, she would talk to me and thank me for that, other things that we did. She was just so thankful, and she was a really special person also. Reuben Marin. This is Rich Marin's father. The best way to describe his father, Reuben Marin, is that he was always there for his family. If Rich or his brothers needed personal or professional advice, a ride to school or to a friend's house, or simply a shoulder to lean on, their father was always there for them. Mr. Marin wasn't the most talkative of men, but he was present and respected. Rich's father taught his family the importance of community service. For many years, while Rich's younger brother was in school, his father served as president of the yeshiva. The respect he earned by navigating the many twists and turns that came with that position would many years later lead to a second career. After retiring as a clothing manufacturer, to this day, Rich and his brother still wear the jackets and the bathing suits made from their father's company. He was hired by the same yeshiva as their executive director. Not many people change professions in their mid to late 60s, but Rich's father did. It was a role for which he was uniquely suited. When he retired from the school, he was hired by another school to serve as their part-time executive director, a position he held till his passing last November. Mr. Marin was born in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, surrounded by a large extended family. In lieu of being drafted during the Vietnam War, he joined the Naval Reserves and worked on airplanes. He joked that many years later that he tried on his pea coat and found bolts and screws in the pockets, wondering what happened to the plane that he'd been working on. Mr. Marin was married to Sandra for 58 loving years. He lived long enough to meet his one great-grandchild, and his second great-grandchild was born just a few days after he passed away. He had the schus of a long and special life. He has meant so much to so many. Valerie Scharfman. Valerie also would come to a lot of different events when she could, and she later on it was much harder for her for a number of reasons. But she was always active. And I would speak to her all the time. Valerie was born in London in 1943 into a true rabbinic royalty. Her father was the great Rabbi Yitzchak Yehuda Swift, son of Rav Avram Dov Beryl Swift and brother of Rabbi Harris Swift and Diane Moshe Swift, the author of Moreshet Moshe, and descendants of Rav Yitzchak Levi Yitzchak Berdishnev and the relatives of the Apter Rebbe, Rabbi Avram Yehoshua Heschel of Apt. Still, Rav Yitzchak Yehuda was a gadol in his own right. Now, there's a reason I put all that in, because she was so proud of her rabbinic heritage. She understood where she is, and she was so proud of it. She actually Her son told me that he's been going through the house and he found letters from really all the Gedolim all over the world to her father, like Rav Moshe and everything. He has boxes and boxes of letters that she had stored away. When Valerie was 8 years old, she and her sister, the award-winning author Bacha Swift Yasgar, who wrote the book Behind the Burqa, the Burqa, I'm sorry, left England to move to Sydney, where her father took the position of rabbi in the main shul in Sydney. He stayed there for 3 years before moving to Borough Park, where her father took over as rabbi of Congregation Anshe Sfard, which was one of 5 major schools in Borough Park. Valerie was so proud of this legacy. She attended City College, where she became president of Yagna organization. It was there that she would meet Jerry, her love of her life, who grew up in Bell Harbor, and he was in Harvard Law School and the National Guard. They got married with the Punovitcher Rebbe, who was a Ben Bayit at the Swift home, and he flew in special for that wedding. When Jerry finished the National Guard, he took up a job as a lawyer for the Nixon and Ford administration, serving as the Nuclear Regulations Committee and even saving the National Railways by helping found Amtrak. The family became very active in Jewish life, serving on the board of Shomer Emunah in Greater Washington. Eventually, as the family grew, although not without tragedy, because they lost one of their children. Unfortunately, a few people in West Orange lost children around the same time. So they lost one of their daughters to crib death. In 1979, they moved to West Orange, where Valerie was a very dedicated mother to the 3 remaining children, Aubrey, Keith, and Pamela, who gave them nachas, the grandchildren, Racheli, Esti, Isaac, Nathan, Ariana, Gabrielle, and Udo. Then later on in life, she worked as a Holocaust museum in Clifton. Finally, Seymour Woods. Seymour grew up in Queens, attending one of the most prominent yeshivos, Rabbi Jacob Joseph School. After graduating high school, he attended Brooklyn College. His college degree had to be delayed as he was taken into the Air Force right after the Korean War and was stationed in Korea. He was not able to fly due to his eyesight, and he used his talents in math and engineering to help excel at his jobs, even earning Airman of the Month honors. After coming back from the Air Force, he found another use for his brilliant math talents that he was on the stock exchange. Seymour was a go-getter and he wanted to work as a trader. He took out ads in the newspaper looking for work. Someone saw his talent and offered him a job and taught him the business. It wasn't long before he had his own seat on the trading floor, one that he kept for 27 years before selling it and moving to online trading. In March 1960, he met Elaine, a physical therapist, at a dance, and she would become his life partner and give him 2 sons, Aaron and Beth, and Stephen, who married to Jennifer, and the 2 grandsons, Brett and Jason. I saw him right before he passed away. He's a very brilliant man. He was quiet. He was quiet, but he always had interesting things to say when I talked to him. And all these people, everybody's going to be missed. I think I would listen to. I said this is multimedia, so there's the next Kina is Kina 25. So we're actually not going to read this Kina either, but we're going to read a different Kina instead. It's going to be on the next slide. So this is going to be a kina of all the tragedies. We're going to put them together. All the tragedies from Crusades, the Holocaust, and October 7th. So the kina we're going to read instead of the kina number 25 is going to be the kina for October 7th. And I have that on the next slide. But beforehand, I figure we'll listen to a little bit of music, and has the story of this Nigun, and the story of who he was, and so on, and it's very powerful. So we see how we move from tragedy to this hope, and to see how destruction leads to growth, as what was could be again. Okay, so this is the Kina. Before the Kina, there's a really powerful story. It was put out by World Mizrahi. I heard this story a few times in different ways. This is the hero of the shelter on Route 232. So we'll talk about that, and then we'll read the Kina for October 7th.
There was a historian, an army historian that came to our house, and he said that since the grenade was invented till today, there isn't anything like that, any story like that, anywhere in the world.
We even heard that in Iran, right?
Ah, yes. That even in Iran.
People were writing about it, how amazing it is.
Simchat Torah came, and Aner, after the meal, he said that he is going with his friend Hirsch Goldberg to the Nova Festival. And 6 o'clock in the morning, a war started. And the festival was attacked. Aner and his friends were the last one to come to the Migunit. It was full crowded. Migunit is a very small shelter. The first thing he did is keep them calm, confidence that he's taking care. They start hearing the shootings closer and closer. Now he went out from the Migunit, came back and told them that 20 terrorists coming to the Migunit, fully armed. Searched something that he can protect the people. And so a bottle of beer, he broke it and he held it in his hand in order that if a terrorist will enter, he will stab them. And if you look carefully in the picture, you can see that he's holding something in his hand, and that's the broken bottle that he waited. They stopped throwing grenades. They threw the first grenade and they took the grenade and threw it out. You have something like 3 seconds before it explodes. But 3 seconds could be a very long time if you calculate it well. And from the grenade to grenade, you can see the confidence that he had to hit them with the grenades, with the live grenades that were thrown on him.
הנקודה שהוא עמד היא הייתה פה, מאחורי הזיג הזה כאן. בתמונה שהוא עומד כאן.
קשה לי להיכנס, לא יכולה להיכנס לשם. כל הכתמים של אדם על האדמה.
He succeeded in throwing something like 8 grenades. Eventually, they launched 3 RPGs on the Migunit. In the third RPG, they succeeded. And they got killed there.
שמחה שהוא, אני כל הזמן אומרת את זה, זה מה שאני הכי מרגישה, שהוא לא היה חסר אונים, שהוא עד הרגע האחרון תפקד. וזה בעיניי מחזק, אני חושבת. לא?
There were 5 hostages that were taken. And in the Migunit there were 7 people that eventually survived.
כל המציל נפש אחת מישראל, כאילו הציל עולם ומלואו.
כולנו פה עומדים על הבמה בזכות בן אדם אחד, גיבור, שהציל את כולנו.
מתרגש לראות אותך. אני מתרגש. זה בזכות הנר, כן?
ממש.
וואי, זה ממש. אתם כולכם חבורת מופלאים, שזה פשוט זכות היה להדר שזכה להציל.
Since he was a kid and until the end, he was a person that always stand for what he believes in. Really cared about everything. When he saw that people are fighting and or someone is hurting someone else, he would come and stand and say, it's not right.
Nobody was surprised. We were not surprised, but also his friends, his soldiers, his commanders.
כשאני שמעתי על הסיפור, מצד אחד הייתי בהלם, מצד שני אמרתי, הנר. היינו לקראת סוף ההכשרה, ואנחנו ככה נכנסנו לאיזה שבוע שעושים בו תחרויות בין כל הסיירות, בין כל הקומנדו, ומתאמנים אליו קשה, מאוד קשה, ומגיע אליי הנר, סך הכל חייל מה שנקרא, דופק לי בדלת, נכנס אליי למשרד ואומר לי, תקשיב, אנחנו מאוד מעריכים את הרצון להצליח בתחרות, והכל טוב, ואנחנו ניתן מה שאפשר, אבל אתם צריכים לתת בחזרה. לא הגיוני שהאוכל מסביב לא טוב, ושהשינה אולי. וכאילו מצד אחד אמרתי לעצמי, בונה, איזה חצוף. מצד שני, קסמתי מזה. זה משהו שמאוד אהבתי בו, וידעתי שקיים בו אותו אנרכיזם או אנרכיזם. הכוכב הזה הנוצץ נמצא בכל מקום.
He played piano since he was first grade. Really believed that music is a language that will make the world better. Discovered the hip-hop, rap style. He started to compose and do the music, and they came to life. Even in one of his songs, he says, if I die, you should publish my album. So that's what we did.
אני נזכרת בו בדרך כלל שכותבת שירים, או לפעמים אני סתם כאילו קצת מדברת איתו בראש. אני ואנר היינו אחים מאוד טובים, עשינו הרבה דברים ביחד. משהו בזה שהוא כבר לא בחיים, הגעגוע גורם יותר לאהוב אותו ולחזק את הקשר שלנו למרות שהוא לא פה.
For us it's not Aner the hero. For us it's Aner, he's our son. He's a big brother, he's a musician, he's a painter, he's funny, he's a friend, he's so many things.
He showed us that if you have love for people, if you have dignity, if you have moral values, you can stand only with that against evil and you can succeed in saving people's lives.
I think it's better for me not to summarize, but to quote one of Aner's songs. He says, I'm a man who believes in change. Never mind change, it's enough to be a man who believes. Never mind believing, it's enough to be a man, to be a mensch. And that's what he was.
This is just one story of the many, many stories that we have in that happened to us throughout the generations. We'll hear more about it in the Chafetz Chaim videos. Rav Rimon put together this kinos. So we're going to just say this kinot. I'll just go slowly. We could say it. And he does it to Tsun Elitzion, but we could say it. You could read it in English. I guess maybe I would just read it quickly. Simchas Torah, Shemini Atzeres, our dancing was turned into despondent grief. On this day, fences were breached in the towns of Gaza envelope, Ofakim, and Sderot. How was our land humiliated? The land that was filled with Hamas. From the Gaza Strip, the source of evil. From the root of Hamas came poison. How in a place of 7 hakafos, they fled for their lives, for the fear of kidnapping. A cruel enemy ignites fire, murder degraded without letting up. How in the place of the prayer for rain, my beloved went down to the scented flower beds. Roses were murdered, a desecration of God's name. Do not give a memorial in remembrance to the murderers. How in the 76th year, there were pillars of smoke, blood, and fire, a Jew in hiding, whispering in fear, instead of joy of the holy Shabbat. How did the precious children of Zion fall into the hands of the accursed rapist? The plucked of the cheeks were given over to the attackers. Our brothers were taken captive by the violent ones. On the day your name was defiled, soldiers fought to advance your great name. Look and see who is like your people Israel. Strengthen us, give us courage. and may the Redeemer come for Zion. They fought like iron, the beloved, brave ones, the gentle souls guarding from the oppressors. Due to their courage, we witnessed the salvation of words. Our stature was straightened in the generation of redemption. On the day of our inheritance was the bravery of people released for publication. Our courageous ones give up in their souls in their palms. Our Father, our King, avenge the vengeance of our brothers. Your great name was called. The one who remembered and mentioned the covenants of their fathers from north to south. They rose up to destroy us, but your covenant remained steadfast in our land. The dictators of Persia initiated plots. They sent a barrage against those who raised a prayer. They sat in shelters, their eyes hoping. They saw your miracles, the awesome one of praise. The wings of spirits, the wings of eagles, we have seen soldiers' wives. Parents and children bury their loved ones, strengthen and fortify them, the congregation of heroes. Waves of hate engulfed your world. Oppressors swarm over those who sanctify your name. They chase your messengers, those who carry your flag. May you skip over us with love. Return the hostages, call for freedom for those in captivity, plant those who have been uprooted with the everlasting love, rehabilitate the wounded, raise up the depressed, lead your congregation with kindness and mercy. We give thanks to you for our state, for our redemption, for our salvation of our soul. United leads us upright in our land. Hasten the Son of David, our righteous Mashiach. Okay. Next, canon number 31. H2 Bekirbi. So this is another song. This is what allows me to do the songs, is because we see that there are songs. We have this, Elitzion. It's all about finding different ways to have the same thing, the same feelings are brought through movies, are brought through music, are brought through art, are brought through stories. It all comes up the same to bring out these messages to light. So Eish Tukad Bekirbi, it's the story that we're going to sing is B'tseisi mi Mitzrayim, B'tseisi mi Yerushalayim, that it compares how great and happy we were when we left Mitzrayim to how sad we are when we left Yerushalayim. So why was that? Why did we leave Yerushalayim? So there's actually lots of reasons. The Gemara brings there's lots of reasons brought why it was. But the most popular that's talked about is Aval b'mikdash sheni haya oskim b'torah mitzvahs u'milius chasadim. People during the Mikdash Sheni, they were involved in Torah mitzvahs and gemilas chasadim. Why was things destroyed? Because there was sinas china. Kula sinas chinam keneged shlosh averos. We see that the hatred of Jews are equal to three different major sins: avodah zarah, gilui arayos, and shifchas damim. So, what does love of a Jew look like? Very quick story, very powerful story.
Rav Yoel Teitelbaum, the Satmar Rebbe, Zeichet Tzaddik Livrocha, was well known as a fierce defender of Jewish values. What's probably less well known is that he had a heart of gold. He was an easy touch, as they say. People would pour their hearts out to him and he'd give them unstintingly. One day, this well-known, at least well-known, but not to Rabbi Yoel, well-known con man managed to weasel his way in and get a yechidus with Rabbi Yoel. This con man poured his heart out. It was terrible sorrows. His wife had mental problems. She was in and out of hospital. He had a son who had no money. They just kicked him out of his apartment. One sorrow after another, until Rabbi Yoel was sitting with tears pouring out of his eyes. He put his hands into his pockets, pulled out all the money he had. He says, take it, take the money. Go and make sure your wife is okay. Go and get your son a proper apartment. Go. He gave him a big bracha. As this conman was running out the door, in walked the Rebbitzin. She caught sight of this conman leaving, and she said to Rabbi Yoel, who was that? What was he doing here? He said, My wife, my dear wife, you have no idea of the tale of Tsoros that I've just heard from this poor man. And he went on to catalogue about his wife and his son. And he said, you must be joking. This guy doesn't have a wife. He's not even married. The whole thing that he said is a lie. It's completely untrue. None of it is true. Rabbi Yoel said, oh, Baruch Hashem. None of it's true. That's real Ahavas Yisrael.
Yeah, that's real Ahavas Yisrael. Okay. We'll sing Lamed Aleph. I'll sing it. The song goes like this: Eshtukad bekir bi bahalo si ali bi b'tseisi mi mitzrayim. Then it goes down. Kinim ayira laman az kira b'tseisi mi Yerushalayim. It goes up. Az yashir Moshe shir lo yinashel b'tseisi mi mitzrayim. V'yakonen yirmiyav v'nenanehinin yad b'tseisi mi Yerushalayim. Basis konan v'shachan ha'anan b'tzeisi mi Mitzrayim v'chamas el shechna alai ka'anana b'tzeisi mi Yerushalayim galayam ramo v'chachoma kamo b'tzeisi mi Mitzrayim Zidunim shatfu v'al tzafu b'tzeisi mi Yerushalayim Dagon shamayim mitzor yezubo mayim b'tzeisi mi Mitzrayim lana umirorim mayim hamarim b'tzeisi mi Yerushalayim hashkem b'harei b'tzvivot hachorei b'tzeisi mi Mitzrayim Korei elevel al naros bavel b'tzeisi mi Yerushalayim Umarei kvod Adonai ke'esh ocheles lefanai b'tzeisi mi Mitzrayim V'cherev l'tusha v'tevach n'tusha b'tzeisi mi Yerushalayim Zevach mincha v'shemen hamishcha b'tzeisi mi Mitzrayim Segulas el l'kucha ketzon l'tivcha b'tzeisi mi Yerushalayim Chagim b'shabbosos u'mofsim ve'osos b'tzeisi mi Mitzrayim Tanis ve'evel yado parachevel b'tzeisi mi Yerushalayim Tovo alim l'arba de golim b'tzeisi mi Mitzrayim ale yishmaelim ve'machanos arelim b'tzeisi mi Yerushalayim yovel shmita ve'eret shoketa b'tzeisi mi Mitzrayim machon l'tznitus v'charus v'chasus b'tzeisi mi Yerushalayim kapores ve'aron ve'avnei zikaron b'tzeisi mi Mitzrayim Yavne hakala b'chlei habala b'tzeisi mi Yerushalayim Leviim v'haronim v'shivim t'kenim b'tzeisi mi Mitzrayim Nogashim v'monim u'mochrim v'konim b'tzeisi mi Yerushalayim Moshe Yireinu v'Aaron Yinachenu b'tzeisi mi Mitzrayim Nebuchadnezzar V'adras yonos sar b'tzeisi mi Yerushalayim Na'aroch nechama v'Adonai shama b'tzeisi mi Mitzrayim Rachak mimenu v'nei einenu b'tzeisi mi Yerushalayim Sizrei parochas v'sidrei ma'areches b'tzeisi mi Mitzrayim Chema niteches v'ale socheches b'tzeisi mi Yerushalayim Ola zvachim ve'ijay nechuchim b'tzeisi Mitzrayim b'cherev medukarim b'nei Tzion hayikarim b'tzeisi mi Yerushalayim Pare migvaos lechavo nikvaos b'tzeisi mi Mitzrayim shrikos achuros b'kolos v'zavaos b'tzeisi mi Yerushalayim tzitza zahav hamshel araha b'tzeisi mi Yerushalayim Hashluach nezem ve'afes ezem b'tzeisi mi Yerushalayim kedusha nevuah v'kavod Adonai nira b'tzeisi mi Mitzrayim nigala umora v'ruach hatuma b'tzeisi mi Yerushalayim v'rina v'yeshua v'chatzos ros hatrua b'tzeisi mi Mitzrayim zakas olel v'nakas chalel b'tzeisi mi Yerushalayim shulchan menorah v'chalil Torah b'tzeisi mi Mitzrayim elil b'toeva upesel hamatzeva b'tzeisi mi Yerushalayim Toda teuda Uchlei hacham da b'tzeisi mimitzrayim sason v'simcha v'nas yagon v'anacha b'shuvi Yerushalayim. In the past, I played different songs for that. Here is one of them, a new one. I try each year. I'll put a different a song from this because different people writing songs. I made this AI of just quick AI of people leaving Mitzrayim. They're all so happy, and then the destruction and leaving Yerushalayim. I did that quickly on AI. Actually, it wasn't so quickly, but this is a song. We're not going to listen to the whole thing, just to get a taste of. Get a little taste of another song. That's a nice song. Okay. Next, Kinot 37. The Sion. So we have all these ones on Sion. We're going to pick one. And does God see our tears? This is very powerful, very nice story. Rav Aryeh Leibowitz. I try to bring from all over, different speakers, different different ideas. So this is a share that he gave on this Kinot.
We're going to skip ahead. We're going to do one of the Tzions, just because I feel like you're supposed to do at least one of the Tzions, and then we'll do the Holocaust Kinot, and then we'll conclude with Elit Tzion. We'll do Kinot Lamed Zayin, Kinot 37, just because I don't think we've ever done it before. It describes Eretz Yisrael. It describes the beauty of Eretz Yisrael, the soil of Eretz Yisrael, the animals of Eretz Yisrael, the people of Eretz Yisrael, in very glowing terms. And I just want to make one point, not so much about this Kinot, or really not at all about this Kinot, but about the concept of Kinos. And, the big, I guess, the elephant in the room, when it comes to Tisha B'Av, is that we've done this before. We've done it so many times before. I mentioned recently in the shir that I heard Rabbi Sobolovsky say in the shir that when he went to get a haircut before the 3 weeks, so it's a non-Jewish barber, and the non-Jewish barber working in a frum community knows, hopefully he knows the dinim of Peos HaRosh, but whatever, he knows a bunch of stuff. So about when Jews are allowed to get haircuts, when they're not allowed to get haircuts. He'll tell you during Sfira, Erev Shabbos, that's also Erev Rosh Chodesh, that is the day that they can get haircuts. So he said to Rabbi Sobolovsky, I know no haircuts for the next 3 weeks because of the temple that was destroyed. But it's been at least 5-6 years, no? It's as long as his career has been, 5-6 years. He assumes that the temple was destroyed right before he started cutting people's hair. So that's the it's thousands of years. And what happened to all the tears? What happened to all that crying? It's nothing. And it's really a kasha in general. What happens to all of our tears? What happens to the unanswered tefillos? So someone sent me a story I think illustrates the point. It's an obvious point, and it's a point that is fundamental to Hashkafa, but we've heard it and we've said it 1,000 times, but sometimes when it's illustrated through a story, it packs a bigger punch. There's a fellow, Rav Avram Mordechai Malach, a mashpia, a darshan in Eretz Yisrael. His father, Pinchas Menachem, was a Ger Chassid. He has the name of a Ger Chassid. He experienced Siberia 80 years ago. And ultimately he made his way to Eretz Yisrael and he got married. He started a beautiful family. And this Rav Pinchas Menachem was living in Eretz Yisrael, and unfortunately his wife became very sick. And they had a number of young children at the time, and the family felt that for the youngest child, their 5-year-old Yankel, it would be too difficult, so they would send him away to a relative, to live by a relative on a regular basis, because his mother couldn't take care of him anymore. But children have a certain intuition, and even little children understand things even when they don't fully comprehend them. So Yankel always made it a point to say goodnight to his mommy. Every time he'd go for the night to his aunt's house, he always made certain to say goodnight to his mom before he left, to say goodbye. He had some sort of intuition. And then the horrible day came when Reb Pinchas Menachem's wife was nifter. And the pain of the little children losing a parent, of experiencing that loss, was so great. And how were they going to explain it to the 5-year-old? And they decided, as families sometimes do, that he shouldn't attend the Levaya. He's too young. He can't process this. It was Yud Dalid Menachem Av in the year 1970. Yankel was not part of the Levaya. His relatives took care of him. And then everyone came home after the Levaya. He went home and he started to look for his mother. And he said he wanted to have his nightly routine where he says goodnight to his mother. Wo bist du, Mama? Where are you, Mom? And people started trying to distract him. Look over here, this toy, that. What do you say to a 5-year-old? And siblings and relatives are trying to distract him, well-intentioned, trying to bribe him. And he starts crying. And he's getting more and more frustrated. How come no one's listening to him? Where's Mama? And he's screaming and he's crying. And now that brings out a certain emotion in the entire family, because the magnitude of the loss is felt so much stronger by everybody. After the Levaya, things have calmed down a little bit, as they tend to. But now all the siblings are sobbing. And someone picks up little Yankel and they bring him to his aunt, who he's been staying by. And things calm down a little bit. And they sit down to Shiva, and Yankel's older sister, who's just a few years older than him, she's also a little girl, turns to her father, and she finds a calm, quiet moment to talk to him. She says, Tati, is there such a thing as Tchias HaMesim? And he said, yes, there is. So she said, Tati, can you explain to me? How could it be? A little child, an innocent child, a little child crying and screaming, Mama, Mama, where are you? How could that not awaken Hashem's rachamim? How could Hashem ignore such a cry? It pierced every heart in our house. Why would Hashem not have rachmanus on this little boy? And Rav Pinchas Menachem was a very holy Jew, a Ger Chassid, and he said, I don't know. I have no idea. But one thing I'll tell you, we don't cry for nothing. Hashem doesn't throw our tears away in the garbage. Hashem hears our cries. They don't go unanswered. Years go by, Rav Pinchas Menachem remarries. They have 2 little children. One of them was Rav Avram Mordechai Malach. He's a half-brother of this Yankel from the first marriage. Yankel gets married and he starts a family of his own. And early on in his marriage, Hasidic family. How well did he know his wife already? He said, we're going to have a get-together with my siblings for the yard site of my mother on Yud Daled Av. And she said, oh, Yud Daled Av? I thought maybe we could do something special for my birthday on Yud Daled Av. Now, he probably knew about that before, but it never hit him that, wow, it's so interesting that my wife has a birthday on my mother's yard site. And his wife said, I didn't realize it was your mother's yard site. It's okay, we'll do it a different day. We'll do something for my birthday. It doesn't have to be on the yard site. Yard site can't be pushed off. A birthday you can celebrate whenever. And then Yankel realizes that his wife was not just born on the date of his mother's yard site. She was born on the exact day of his mother's patira. And he calls his sister Yocheved and he tells her what he just noticed and what suddenly came to him. And Yocheved remembered that day. She reminded him of that day, of how he was screaming and crying. And when they came back from the Levaya, a little 5-year-old Yankala, Mama, Mama, where are you? And how their father taught them this Yisod and Emunah. We don't cry for nothing. They, on a hunch, looked at the time of birth of his wife and found that it was exactly at the same time when he was crying for his mama. HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't throw away tears. HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't waste any of the tears. We don't know where they're used, we don't know how they're used, but we know that we can trust HaKadosh Baruch Hu as the keeper of the tears, the one who knows how to use them best, how to use them in a way that's going to serve us best. 2
minutes we'll take to this, and we're coming towards the end of the presentation. Tzion Kachi number 37. 2 minutes. I have still more very powerful stuff coming up. Number 41. So, Shalis Rufa Ba'esh. This is the burning of the Talmud. Somebody did a short video of France burning of the Talmud. Very well done. Another AI video. Jewish Learning Institute.
March 3rd, 1240 was a Shabbat. But for the harassed Jews of medieval France, numbering as many as 100,000 souls, it was not to be a day of rest, but of unprecedented unrest. They were praying in their synagogues when the raid began in cities and towns throughout the kingdom. Agents of King Louis IX of France burst through the doors of Jewish houses of prayer and seized thousands of hapless prisoners. All the detainees were transported to Paris, where they were held in convents under strict guard to await trial on accusations of grave crimes. For 3 long months, they languished in captivity until their collective trial began. Meanwhile, the Jews of the kingdom gathered continuously to storm the heavens on their behalf with fasting and prayer. 4 of the greatest luminaries of the French Jewish community, led by the highly respected Rabbi Yechiel of Paris, served as the prisoners' legal defense. Following the trial, the judges continued to debate the case for another 2 years, while European Jewry held its breath. Finally, in June of 1242, 24 wagons of tightly packed convicts rolled into Place de Grève, causing the Jews of France to emit a collective groan of horror. Place de Grève was a public square along the banks of the Seine River, notorious as the historic site of public executions, hangings, beheadings, and burnings at the stake. Throngs of Parisians lined the streets to enjoy the spectacle, while those of the Jewish faith remained hidden, terrified to venture from their homes. The prisoners had been found guilty and were sentenced to extermination through public burning. The evil verdict was carried out with glee. But as they were consigned to the flames, there were no cries of agony or despair, nor was there a smell of burning flesh, because the prisoners were not people. They were books. Thousands upon thousands of handwritten scrolls and codices, every copy of the Talmud that the king's agent could find in France, almost all of which had been sheltered in the nation's synagogues, had been arrested, put on trial, and condemned to public burning. The Jewish tradition was consigned to the fire that day, as angry flames roared at their ancient wisdom. Their teachings rose as ash, and an inferno ingested their spiritual treasures. The Jewish communities of France were singed with grief and flung into mourning for their executed pages, for their martyred beliefs.
Actually, I don't think this was an AI movie, but JLI, but very well done. I just want to give you some modern examples of this. I don't know if you can see this. Modern examples. All this just this week. Author says U.S. publisher nixed Holocaust book after he refused to condemn Israel. Maybe it was last week or whatever, July 14th. Dark Horse Comics demanded the book on Nazi genocide include anti-Israel genocide charges. Last week, interviews with Israeli and Jewish writers who report facing rising isolation and exclusion. Jerusalem-based literary agent Deborah Harris represents dozens of leading voices of Israeli literature, from established titans to debut authors of literary gems. Her agency typically sells 5 to 10 literary novels a year in the United States. Since October 7th. They have not sold a single one. Another book burning 2 weeks ago, the cancellation of Jewish Voices. Another publishing house promised inclusion, intersectionality, and a bunch of other buzzwords, but they reject Jews. We don't publish Zionist books. So here we see just a modern day Aish Shalei Srufa Beish. It's just a modern day burning of the Talmud, and that's what the kin is all about. All right, we're gonna do the last one is Elitzion. Have this video and then a very quick, one to end off on a great note. This was put out by Mizrahi. A very powerful video. And then we'll see the last one, and then we'll sing Elitzion, and that will be the end of the Kinos for this year for us together. But I hope that you continue looking through the Kinos, and we have a great program for the rest of the day as well.
Every year in Israel, a siren sounds. The entire country stops. Cars pull over on the highway. People stand in silence. A nation remembers. Within the space of 24 short hours, a nation moves from its deepest grief to its greatest celebration. The siren of Yom HaZikaron fades. The songs of Yom HaAtzmaut begin. For many, it feels almost impossible. How can a country move so quickly from mourning to celebration? Now we understand it more than ever, because now it is not theoretical. It is painfully personal. October 7th did not only shatter Israel's sense of security, it unleashed a global wave of anti-Semitism, often disguised as anti-Zionism, from Israel's borders to Jewish communities around the world, from Be'eri to Bondi. Since that day, our people have lived through a trauma that will shape us for generations. Mothers, daughters, fathers, sons, friends, and neighbors brutally murdered and hundreds taken hostage. Hundreds of soldiers who fell in battle. Communities shattered. Reservists leaving their homes and livelihoods for months on end. An entire nation living with sirens, funerals, and uncertainty. And even now, the story is not finished. Soldiers are still fighting. Jewish communities around the globe are on constant high alert. We still do not know how this chapter will end. And yet, if we step back for a moment, something remarkable emerges. Again and again throughout Jewish history, the exact same pattern appears. Moments when the Jewish people seemed vulnerable, exposed, and even powerless. And yet, those very moments became turning points. Times when courage appeared from the most unexpected places, when responsibility replaced fear, when the Jewish people discovered within themselves a strength they did not know they possessed. Not because suffering disappears, but because suffering awakens something deeper. Our tradition teaches a profound principle. You cannot tell the story of redemption without first acknowledging the pain that came before it. One line in the Haggadah that we are obligated to recite in the Seder night says it best. Avadim hayinu leparo b'Mitzrayim. We were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt. Because freedom that forgets suffering is not real freedom. But suffering is only part of the story, not the story itself. One must finish the sentence. Vayotzi'enu Hashem Elokecha misham. And God liberated us from Egyptian suffering. Throughout Jewish history, renewal has grown out of devastation. After the destruction of the second Beit HaMikdash came the Mishnah, the rise of Torah scholarship and the synagogue, institutions that sustained Jewish people throughout centuries of exile. And after the terrible pogroms of the late 19th century, came the Zionist movement, a movement of return and redemption that would ultimately lead to the rebirth of Jewish sovereignty in the state of Israel after 2,000 years. Today, even while the pain of October 7th is still present, the next chapter is beginning to be written. After 12 years, all hostages who were held in Gaza have finally returned home. For the first time in 20 years, the people of Sderot are beginning to experience a quiet life, free from Hamas rocket fire. The danger Israel faced from Syria has significantly diminished, and those who devised terror against Israel are no more. Sinwar, Nasrallah, Khania, Khamenei. Who could have believed 2.5 years ago that Hamas would be on its knees, Hezbollah struggling to sustain itself, and the root of annihilationist destruction of Israel, the regime of the Ayatollahs, is fighting for its life. Right now, the boots of our soldiers are on the ground in Lebanon, while our Air Force has freedom of the skies over Iran, and they operate in tandem with the United States, working together to root out the terrorist entity that threatened the state of Israel and the entire free world. These are some of the miracles that we have merited to live through. None of this, though, erases the pain. None of it brings back those we have lost. But it reminds us of something essential. The Jewish people are not only witnesses to history, we are proactive participants. Suffering is not an eternal fate. We shape our own destiny. This is why the transition from Yom HaZikaron to Yom HaAtzmaut is so powerful. They are not two separate days. They are two parts of the same story. The pain and the privilege. The sacrifice and the sovereignty. Because the cost is not abstract. It has names, faces, families. Today, as we approach another Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaAtzmaut. Israel stands in the middle of history, not at the end of it. The war is not fully finished. Threats still surround us. The future remains uncertain. But something else is also clear. The Jewish people are not the same people we were before October 7th. We have been reminded of who we truly are. A people capable of extraordinary courage. A people willing to take responsibility for our destiny. A people who understand that independence is not to be taken for granted. The state of Israel is not only a refuge, it is a mission, a destiny. And from Zion continues to emerge a living vision of faith, responsibility, and Jewish destiny. We mourn those we have lost, and with humility, courage, and emunah, we are partners in moving Jewish history forward. Yom HaZikaron is the great price of freedom. Yom HaAtzmaut is the enormous privilege of living it.
So this is an answer. I wanted to bring it all back to where we started, of the fear of what's happening in the world, how Israel's becoming isolated. And yet we remember who we are, our courage, and remember the Netzach Yisrael, that eventually that we will come back. And we have faith in Hashem and this whole process. We don't understand it, but we have faith, and we're going to do what we can. We have to, it doesn't excuse us. We have to do what we can to make to do Kiddush Hashem, to bring all those messages home and become better people and stand and be proud, to be proud Jews. I'll end off with one very quick video. And then we're going to sing Elitzion, and then the keynotes. What Rav Soloveitchik was could be it once again. Last Memhe, last Kina. Elitzion ve'areha, kimo isha b'tzireha, v'chipisu la chagura sak al ba'al neureha, ale armon asher nutash, ve'ashma v'ton adoreha, ve'al bias mechor fe'el, v'soch mikdash chadoreha, Elitzion ve'areha, kimo isha b'tzireha, v'chibisu la chagura sak al ba'al neureha ale galus mishar se'el mini imei shir zimareha ve'al damam asher shufach kemo meimei ye'oreha elei tzion v'yareha kemo isha b'tzireha v'chibisu la chagura sak al ba'al neureha ale hegyon mecholeha asher damam be'areha Ve'al va'ad hasher shamim ubitoei sanhedrea elei tzion v'yareha kemo isha b'tzireha v'chibisu la chagura sak al ba'al neureha elei zivchei timideha epidunei bechoreha ve'al chilul kalei heichal u'mizbeach ketoreha elei tzion v'yareha Kemo isha b'tzireha v'chibisu la chagura sak al ba'al neureha ale tapei melocheha b'nei David gevireha ve'al yafyom asher chashak be'esuru kechtareha ele tzion v'yareha Kemo isha b'tzireha v'chibisu la chagura sak al ba'al neureha ale kavod asher gala be'es korban devireha Ve'alochetz asher lachatz v'sach sakim chagureha leitzion ve'areha Kimo isha b'tzireha v'chibisu la chagura sak al ba'al neureha le'machad rov makos asher huku nizireha ve'al nifutz ale sela ole elaha v'ninoreha Aletzion ve'areha kamo isha b'tzireha v'chibisu la chagura sak al ba'al neureha le'simcha ayoy ve'ha Sachaku al shebareha ve'al inoi b'nei chorim nevine ve'ha tehoreha Eletzion ve'areha kamo isha b'tzireha v'chibtzu la chagura sak al ba'al neureha le'pesha asher ivsa Sulul derech ashureha ve'al tzivos kehaleha zivufeha shechoreha Eletzion ve'areha kamo isha b'tzireha v'chibtzu la chagura sak al ba'al neureha le'kalos mecharfeha ve'es rabo pegareha ve'al rigshas migafeha b'soch mishkan chatzereha Eletzion ve'areha K'mo isha b'tzireha v'chibisu la chagura sak al ba'al neureha le'shimcha asher chulal b'fi kamei mitzireha ve'al tachan yitzav v'chulach kishov u'shma amareha Eli tzion v'yareha K'mo isha b'tzireha v'chibisu la chagura sak al ba'al neureha. Thank you all for attending the slichos. Again, we have starting at 1:40. 1:03 is the time you could get up. 1:40 is the is mincha. 2:30 starts the women's program. Then 4 o'clock Tehillim. 4:30 is the shir by Rebbetzin Stone. 5:30 is the Chafetz Chaim videos. That's going to take us till Mincha at 7:45. That's a long videos. And then we'll have the Esha Torah video, and we'll end. I think it's 8:56 is 8:44 is Marv, and I think 8:56 is the end of the fast. Thank you all again for attending.